Hello, everybody. I forgot to turn off the elevator music. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Banter with the boys. We've got a brand new look. We've got graphics coming in. Shout out to Bluebell. Thanks for the awesome graphics. I'm Munch. That's Dagda above me. We are the boys, and today we're joined for some banter by NotDonJake, who is secretly DonJake, and VeteranEU. Guys, welcome to the stream. Veteran, welcome back. Jake, welcome for the first time. It's great to have you. You've been kind of popping on social media over the last, I guess 12 months. You've kind of meteoric risen within the league scene. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the bots from Chengdu, mainland China, that have been really helping me on my recent rise. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Veteran, great to have you back once again. I can see you've come fully equipped.
Oh, yeah.
I do want to write, this one is banter with the boys, but I fully encourage you to drink as much of that whiskey as
Veteran
you're
has just been
willing to partake in.
insisting. Veteran is insisting that it is still bevies, and every time we say banter, he just autocorrects to bevies.
Yes, I mean, it was bevies when I was here. It will be bevies when I'm gone. It will be bevies when I die. It's bevies with the boys.
I will just say, bevies is not dead. It will be back. We're going to save it like special occasions. Yeah. Today is like a sort of bevies episode. Rob has to go to EU for
we're not good enough.
So.
Yeah, so I'm on the wall.
Basically, yeah, it's down to quality of guest. So, unfortunately.
Know your worth, DonJake. I bought my own bevies. Okay?
I was going to say, if I drink water out of a Brewdog cup, is basically as far as I can get, you know?
It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Thank you, everyone in chat, for joining us as well. We're going to be talking about a few things today, plenty of topics to start off with. But as you can see on your screen, if you haven't been living under a rock, this is kind of an EU gang here. So I'm going to sort of take a little bit more of a backseat in this episode and let Rob do most of the hosting, as he's somewhat of an expert in the scene. I've been kind of busy with the Chinese League of Legends, so I'm gonna partake, but I'm not gonna be leading the charge on this one. So Rob, I'll kick it your way, mate.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to prep Munch on us to get us into things. I was kind of like, I feel like being a European fan just is a lot of negativity at the moment because our teams haven't looked so hot. And like, I don't know where you guys want to start, because I feel like for me, it's very easy to kind of go towards like top of the table and start talking about like, you know, where G2 sits at the moment. Because personally, I think there's obviously they are the team that's, well, after losing to Fnatic, still first, second in the league. But this is not a team that looks convincing to me whatsoever. And I don't know where your guys' heads are at, but I just can't look at G2 and go like, this team is going to do well at an MSI.
I'm actually more confident about Europe overall when it comes to Worlds. At least I will say that for MSI, I'm not really that big on it, but I do think that the inclusion of MAD has forced teams to reevaluate the way that they approach early game. Because early game has always been a really big weak part of G2 itself, and everyone's always been trying to catch up with G2. So they've normally tried to focus on responding to their free lane setups later on in the game. But MAD have forced both G2 to reevaluate how they do those early rotations, and the rest of the league to reevaluate how they do that, which was a similar function that they used to perform in the ERLs. They were never the best ERL team. This team never actually won EU Masters. They got really close once, but that was it. And only once did they ever get close. But they did kind of force everyone else to evaluate a part of the game they wouldn't normally look at. And I think in the long run, that's going to benefit G2 when we get to like the world stage. But for example, against like BDS in the first week, you could still see that G2 struggle in that particular aspect. I still think, though, once it gets to like late game free lane sets, especially, G2 are one of the best teams in the world. It's everything before that point where I'm less confident on them.
So, sorry, go on, Jake.
I thought the whole thing as well recently, just from talking to Mickey, and I think one of the acquisitions they made was they brought Duffman in, right? And I'm not going to do what everyone claims to do, which is like, oh, but he's good at this. Just because I've never worked with him and I don't know anything.
I have no idea either.
Yeah, well, I think generally from what I hear, though, and what Mickey seems to have said, is that he's there to help them tighten up mid-game and some of those kind of earlier settings, which is kind of what Veteran is talking about. So you'd assume they're at least working towards that, and they've realized that's a focus for them.
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is just the disconnect that bot lane seems to have for them. Like, oftentimes it'd be like, hey, we're playing hyper aggressive on bot lane when they don't have pressure mid or they don't have pressure from jungle and stuff like that. And I know that's like fixable, but there's a lot of times where I'm just like, this just seems bizarre to me. And they want to try and play out the early game. And look, I guess, bring in Duffman. But I want to say, like, Duffman as well was like, hey, we want to focus on mid, which I do think they're strong at. But it's just like, I don't know. I just find it very hard to rally behind a lot of the LEC teams at the minute because it just feels like there's so many basic mistakes that are being made.
I will say right now, I think we're going to do better at Worlds this year than we did last year. Last year I was not very
Yeah, fair.
confident about
I
us
hope
going
so.
into Worlds. Last year I actually ended up making a tweet midway through the year when NA ended up having like a massive deficit in funds and having to go towards more broad-based North American rosters. I thought, okay, that's it. We're actually going to end up losing to them at Worlds. That was an unironic tweet. Typically, this is how things go. When you end up resting on your actual native talent in the group, you normally get the best innovations then, and that normally does force the rest of the league to start doing well. NRG, let's remember, they got perfect gamed in their debut in summer. Like, they progressed a lot, and it's normally these teams that are actually able to develop and progress. And we have Mad doing that right now for us, and they're going to perform a similar function that NRG did, not necessarily being the guys that win. But back when we were sending teams to Worlds every year, everyone underestimated them at first. Then they get their ass kicked. Then they have to take the one lesson from them that these guys have brought up from tier 2. And then with that lesson, they can do really well. Although obviously, like, Misfits got to like 5 games against SKT when they debuted, right? So it's also, I'm not completely counting out MDK doing a performance at Worlds. But for these reasons, I actually think the development will be there. They're going to get challenged in ways they weren't challenged before. And that is just what they need.
And do you think then for MDK are still like a team you see going to Worlds to represent
Yeah.
Europe, or And what do you think is the aspects that you see that they're going to grow over then, or grow through then?
So the biggest problem they've always had since 2021 has been their team fighting is just arse. When it comes to all-in 5v5s, they just lose straight up. We used to do. Am I allowed to talk about stuff like gambling and stuff like this on?
Yeah.
So that's like, I mean, I'm allowed to drink, right? So shout out, shout out to the East London whiskey that I'm having right now. Whiskey from the new school is their calling card. So
is that a good part of London, Jake? As a Londoner,
it's the best.
Okay,
it's
just
everything
checking.
happens, mate.
I'm from North. I don't really know the regions.
Hackney, born and raised, bro.
I don't know where the fuck that is, bro.
It's where
really?
where a lot of the London riots started, actually.
I know where Shoreditch is. That's it.
Bro, some of the best ones of those.
I know where London is. That's about
it. Anyway,
Sorry,
on the topic of MDK, their all-ins are really arse. We used to do this thing where you could just bet on them against them. I mean, if they did like an all-in 5v5 composition, like I remember their game 5 against Unicorns of Love, which a lot of people were actually watching on my Twitter feed on the final game where they got their Swain composition and was like, wow, they've stomped this draft. And I was like the sole one tweeting, I can't believe they're going to lose like this, because that was a full committed 5v5 comp. They had no choice but to 5v5 of it. They would lose that. They always have. They got around this by doing a Senna Karma composition in winter that was really interesting. And this is the only reason they were actually able to beat Fnatic. And all they did with it was they played this very patient kite back in fights until the enemy split themselves up to the extent where it basically wasn't a 5v5 anymore. And they'd win every fight on that. But that's not the same thing as, say, the Oriana composition that they played, I believe it was this week, where they just threw in every single 5v5, right? That was just a typical all-in composition. They can't play that. And that's what they have to adjust to. It's always been their Achilles heel before. It will be their Achilles heel again. My prediction at the start of winter was that they would do really well in winter, then they would fall off in spring, and then in summer they'd go to Worlds. Because they need to address this, and they found one way to address it in winter. They need to find multiple ways to address it now. I think their focus on early game, which has always been their really good aspect, is partly why they're so bad at this. In scrims, it's very common that if you're just stomping early, they just end the scrim. So I feel like they haven't been getting practice because they're so good at this, and they hyper-focus on this aspect too much at that team fight synergy that they really should have been doing since 2021, but they never have.
I feel like that's something we've seen before in the past as well, where teams are like so good at early game that you then get to the international stage and there's teams that don't just die to you in the early game. It's like, oh, fuck. We never practiced after 20 minutes, lads. Like, where do we fucking go from here?
I was on one of those.
It's sort of that like it's like that phenomenon when you're like the smart kid in school and you go to like the smart kid uni and you're like, oh, you're all the smart kids from your school.
Yeah.
I think of it more as like you're the smart kid at uni, right? And you get really far doing that, but then eventually the big guy realizes he can just punch you in the face and you can't chat shit anymore. Right? That's what I feel. Origin were a really good example of this back when they were the second best team in Europe before whatever happened with Cold, which never really came out. They were so good at early game. They could beat G2 at those phases. They could grab every Drake and then G2 would just beat them late game. They would just beat them late game every single time.
I think there's another facet to it though as well. I think even beyond like the early game thing, I think that ties into scrim culture, like you're saying, like teams will just cancel if you're early. Like teams really, and I'll say this is my perspective as being like an ERL team owner, like creativity is heavily punished as well. Like, bro, we played a game of Riven today in scrims top, and like a team was like, yeah, we don't want to play against this. Like, this is not, we won't play against this in official. And you get this, like, bro, like know there's so many teams. There's a Prime League Div 2 team. I forget what his name is. Crowno maybe is the top laner. This guy played Varus top before, like a lot of people played it. He's plays like Heimerdinger top and shit like this. And like I know every team like fucking hates scrimming against this team because they're just like, yeah, we don't like, it's not applicable for us. It's like so stupid. It's just like, it's such a weird mentality, an approach to like playing against shit like this.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just like, yeah, we refuse to play it. Like it's just grow a fucking pair, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a little bit like, what are you going to do when Riot patches the game and it's not just control mages
Yes.
mid? Like, are you just going to refuse to play, or because
No, we're going to make a Twitter post about wanting to play 80 carries in the bot lane.
Don't get me started again.
It's just like weird approach where it's like we want to extract the final 1% of this scenario in which we've practiced hundreds of times, rather than like glean an individual lesson from something we haven't seen before. It's like so odd. Like it's the repetitivity. I don't know how to say that word. Repetition. That's the one. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I'm the one drinking, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Just had a mini stroke there. Like fair play. But yeah, like it's this weird obsession with repetition that is like bizarre. Like just do the same thing and just protect.
I think that's good in a way. Like your team is doing the same thing in the second half of the split over and over again. You have a very, very specific kind of composition that you.
For sure. But we play in officials, but we like do other stuff in scrims like a lot. You know, like different like champs and shit. But my point was more in like a macro concept, I guess. Like wider.
I think it's interesting as well to talk about in the context of what you were saying earlier, Veteran, on like, you know, Mad bringing a different style that teams have to adapt to, and that kind of, you know, rising tide raises all ships kind of thing. I don't know. I might be misquoting you ever so slightly there, but
no, you're not misquoting me. It's just funny how the like I don't think it's new. I think it's that we've progressively had in the LEC teams deprioritize jungle as a core aspect of early game, when honestly the best way to model an early game is based around your jungler. But because there are 4 laners per team and 1 jungler per team, odds on the guy upper management's going to care about is going to be a laner, and that guy knows dick about jungle. So you end up in a position where Selfmade's not in there anymore, Tinks is not in there anymore. All these really, really good shot calling, parving style junglers are not there anymore. And all that this team has done every single year, they've replaced their jungler like every other split. By the way, MDK have replaced it every other split. Fresco, Super have been the guys that have stayed there the whole time, and they swapped out FES for Alvaro at one point. But they swapped jungler every time, but their system of early game around their jungler was the same. And every time they got a new jungler, they forced that guy in towards that system. It is a complete map jungling. The laners kind of understand you should play around jungling early, so they've approached it from a different manner, but every team could have this is genuinely if they just listen to their jungler. Memento's a really good example of one as well, right? And you can see how smart he is because he does content now, right? And now everyone's realizing maybe you should just listen to this guy. Yeah, you should have listened to guys like this all along. This is how you get good early games. I miss the days of Maxwell and Memento.
There's one problem with him though. One problem with him is he chose Nord over Ruddy. So
did you go for him as a coach? That would have been interesting.
Yeah, we would have tried to get him, but he wanted to go to Nord.
Well,
it's a shame we're going to knock him out of EUM qualification tomorrow. So you know.
Nice.
Do you think then that like Europe just is that why you think in a lot of ways Europe is fundamentally worse at an early game? Is that they don't want to try and like play because you see guys like Milky Way and FPX, right, where the team is willing to play
Kanavi and JDG as well.
Kanavi and JDG, yeah. It just feels like I kind of
coincidentally like the 2 most MVPs in the league in LPL right now. Sorry,
but it does feel a little bit heartbreaking where it's like you do look at both LCK and LPL, where it's like, hey, what's really valuable right now is pushing lanes, so then we can go and invade and shut down the enemy jungler, get a ton of camps for ourselves, and just snowball the game through that. Whereas it feels incredibly unlikely that we're going to see that in Europe. Even the like deprioritization of Ashe in so many cases is like when one team picks it up in a blue moon, it's just it's just not we're not going to be able to match any of that when you get to an international.
I think the metaphor. Sorry,
very quick. I just want to say, like, when we hear stuff like X player is hard to work with, we really know what we're hearing, right? Which is that X player is saying things that we don't really agree with, and we don't have to listen to him because upper management will agree with us over time, and so we can get the guy we want in there. And there have been teams that have been absolutely ruined by this, straight up ruined by this. Players who have sabotaged their own career in this particular manner. And this is just what, like, Selfmade should still be there, and he would be there if it wasn't for situations like this happening. And plenty of players like him that we just named would still be in there. And in every single instance, their teams got way worse. SK did not hit playoffs for 5 splits in a row after they got rid of Tinks, thinking that it was anyone else on that lineup but him that got them to where they were.
What was I gonna say? Fuck.
We're gonna have to see. I'll have to put a little mini stroke counter up.
What was the opening to what he just said? Like, what did you say?
I was just saying, like, the teams are deprioritizing Ashe, not playing for invades.
Yeah. So the metaphor I've always thought of it as is I think there's a lot of similarities weirdly between chess and League of Legends, in the sense that if you study chess, like a lot of the openings, for example, like your first 20 moves, like everything from the book. The game of chess has evolved to a point where it's all rope learned and it's all like calculated by machines and XYZ. So I think a lot of creativity owes to just pure computation and brain power, which is just like hours of study and work and stuff like this. So I think it's reflected in like effort. I mean, like the classic cliche that everyone says is that Asian teams are putting in more effort, which I don't think you can't linearly evaluate that. It's way different to look at it. But in terms of like pure like work output, you would probably suggest that it's probably the Asian teams are doing more work, and you can calculate then from like efficiency and whatever. But I think that's perhaps why there's a disparity in early game is in approach and effective work. Then mid game in chess, generally speaking, is where creativity is favored. Like the modern game less so, because still as you enter into the mid game, you start to see a lot more computation. But like at least like some of the best players in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, like Mikhail Tal, Kasparov, these players were like really renowned for their creativity, which I think is where you see teams like G2, they had like a lot of like they were celebrated as being good at this, even like 2019 and whatnot. Late games when you shift more into like rope learning as well. So I don't know. I think there's for sure a discussion to be had there. Like I've always kind of likened it to being like that somewhat.
I actually think early game something that's been figured out, and I think people.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah.
People definitely. Just that's the humiliating part, though. I think this is the part of the game that can be understood and just isn't being understood. You bring up the Asian teams. A thought I've had lately, but I haven't actually looked into this, so I'm just going to go with the few examples that I have. I don't know if this is represented the entire scene, but like for example, a guy I really respected that I've been up against in the past was Aaron, and now he is essentially the GM of EDG. And he used to just be a coach. Moved up to like a head of coach role. Now he's just straight up like in charge of the Orgs League of Legends area. I've seen similar things in certain Korean organizations as well. And I do wonder how much of this dichotomy is caused by the fact that over in Asia, we put the people who were really strong at understanding the game at a particular point up and up the ranks as they learn the skills to go up those particular ranks, rather than in Europe where there's a definite distinction between what the GM role is and what the coach role is. And that makes them, I wonder how much is due to that.
For sure. In that, it's interesting because it's almost as if they are self-aware as to what the industry is more so than what we are here. Whereas here, it's more like a case of, like in that you like, so say for football traditionally, like it's a really interesting thing I was looking at recently in regards to, oh God, I can't remember the coach, mini stroke again. I think it might be Xabi Alonso, but Xabi Alonso is obviously coaching Bayer Leverkusen right now. And they're winning the Bundesliga, which is like a massive upset because Bayern wins it all the time. And I'm pretty sure Pep, obviously one of the greatest managers of all time, depending on who you ask, the greatest manager of Man City. He apparently was interested in having him. And one of the reasons for this was, it's not Xabi Alonso, it's someone else, but there's a player, Pep basically wanted to do prep for a Champions League game maybe like 10 years ago, and he called this former player that he'd played with up and asked him for like notes on it. And the notes that he'd given him back, he was like, wow, this guy, like the way he looks at the game, the way he views it analytically means that he could be good at that job. And then 10 years later, he asked him to come and be his assistant. And he obviously turned it down and went into do something else. But he's now one of the best managers in the world. It's weird. Like that's almost a similar thing to what you're saying there in the Asian teams, where it's like they recognize skill sets analog to what's going on. And then they build structures around that for the future. Whereas in EU, it's like we don't celebrate players having analytical minds. The only real examples of that ever happened is like, oh, we get a player on the cast. Wow, this player's really good at casting.
Yeah.
Let's set him up for a casting career. It's
Or
never
the
the
physio.
org. Yeah, exactly. It's never the org that's like, hey, this player like got a real brain. We should set him up to be like at the org around. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That also ties into a lot of like cultural branding stuff and culture because we don't. This is a discussion we can get into later, maybe. But I feel like orgs do a really bad job. Although there's limited orgs that can do it, of celebrating legacy. Like I remember when I interviewed Razork and Trimby at 2023 Worlds when they played that C9 best of 3. They had no idea that 10 years ago they'd played that C9 best of 3. You know, the XPK casted in famous series at Season 3 Worlds.
Yeah.
You might laugh, but like that's like a thing. Like if I'm a football club, like or something like this, I'd be like, this is how much this means because this has been a thing. This happened 10 years ago, and this is a big event in our club's history against them, and it sets the match up to mean something.
I think
you know what I mean?
That's also a massive difference just between Eastern and Western League of Legends in terms of like me as a Westerner, even though I'm one of the commentators of LPL, when I look at like EDG versus RNG, this split,
Yeah.
Do I care that much? These teams both currently just suck, right? Like there's an extent to which I care. Obviously, it's my job to care, and like it matters in terms of the standings and stuff. But I don't see this as like the big legacy match when it's EDG versus RNG this split. However, on the Chinese side, they still make a big fucking deal of this matchup. It doesn't matter who's on the roster. It
But
doesn't
there's so
matter.
many
It's all
different
about the
ones.
fucking history, you know.
Like there's Orange EDG, there's the Commerce Wars that were between
Yeah, JD and
JDG and Suning when they were about.
Yeah.
Then you've got like even the Telecom Wars and LCK and stuff as well,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a lot more of this like, hey, we're gonna like big up this whole shebang. And like, look, I think it works from a spectator point, but it's got to affect the
So-
players as well.
There's a really
Can
good
I ask?
example. Sorry, can I just throw one thing in here? Like
Yeah, no, go
SK
for it.
versus Fnatic, right? That was
Yeah.
El Clasico. Now it doesn't exist because SK was not good for a few years, but like it doesn't stop being the classic matchup from all that time ago, you know? Like, and I feel like a lot of that back in the day was more about Peke versus Ocelot as opposed to the organizations.
Yeah, it was that one back door, right? So, like, would you guys plead the fifth if I asked you guys why on earth Fnatic VG2 wasn't match of the week?
Oh, you mean most
Oh,
recently?
yeah.
I thought this was disgraceful. Like,
Yeah, it wasn't match of the week. It was the K-Corp game that was match of the week.
yeah, no, I thought that was
I don't fucking
ridiculous.
know.
I don't know.
Okay.
Like it's not even pleading the fifth. It's just like I don't know.
Yeah, but like that is the
Yeah.
kind of thing where it's like there's history. Like obviously the meme is that everyone just says old kings versus like new kings, blah blah blah, all of this
Yeah.
stuff. But there is so much history there that
Yeah.
we should be tapping into. There is legacy in Europe, and that's a big matchup. And when people are complaining that's not the match of the week, that is what they're talking about. What you guys are talking about here, right? I love that the Chinese still care about EDG RNG. There isn't just hope there, but there's memory. You
Yeah.
know, there
Yeah,
is
no,
a
for sure.
tie into what the region historically has been and could be again, and that is so valuable.
And I think it's I think partly why they wanted to do match of the week. This is my own thought process for Carmen Corp versus Mad Lions Koi is like, hey, we can create a new rivalry here and try and lend itself into that a bit more. But I do think when you've got Fnatic G2, it's like you got to take a back seat for a second. Like that's such a massive matchup to just toss away like that. Just felt very bizarre, especially when Fnatic ended up winning. Like it was the first time they'd won it in Beck and Yonks, but it
think-
just kind of got blown over.
I think the thing with that is it's almost as if they're trying to. I can understand that being the good interpretation, but I mean, the baseline interpretation that at least I had, and like obviously I'm going to be somewhat cynical in some ways because I don't agree with how we create history and legacy anyway. But it feels almost as if trying to reap the rewards of history without following the steps through. I think that can become a great rivalry, but it can't just be because they're both massive at the moment.
Yeah,
that needs to be something that is. That needs to be something that is built. There needs to be moments like say what you will, I don't agree with it at all. But like, for example, the fact that there was rumored to be like fist fights between the KC fans and the Mad Lions fans, that is like a point of contention. You should never like celebrate and encourage that. But like that did happen. Do you know what I mean? Like that's all I'm saying. If you were to plot out tension, you don't need to ever like refer to it or whatever. But that is a point of tension that is actually, I would argue, more valuable than making the match of the week randomly, because it almost feels condescending to do that to them. I don't think that's my point. I think it's condescending to them.
I think it's condescending to the audience because Fnatic VG2 did not become the match of the week worthy matchup because Riot said Fnatic VG2 is match of the week. It became the match of the week worthy one because G2 Fnatic got to the finals over and over again and were like one game apart from each other over and over again and created that history. Making a certain matchup match of the week will never intrinsically make it valuable, and the audience will feel condescended if they think that you guys can just say this is the big one, therefore now you care. No, the K-Corp fans and NDK fans will care about the game no matter what. They'll show up whether it's match of the week or not, right? These teams need to perform at the same level rather than both be 2-4 in the standings right now, with one of them just being 10th. Like, it's not match of the week right now.
It's this weird sort of, existing. Whenever I make criticisms about the esports industry, I almost have to take a step back sometimes, and I'm like, well, this does exist elsewhere and pretty much everywhere as well, somewhat. Just obviously it's a bit more exacerbated in the industry. But there is like a massive veneer of like condescending, I feel like, that occurs sometimes. Like that is a good example where they hand over the match of the week, because it's like almost, guys, like fucking, get excited, guys. It's match of the week. Like we've tossed you a bone here. Like, they fucking know it's match of the week, buddy. Every match is the fucking match of the week for them. They're saving our fucking ass right now. It's like we'll get into this topic later as well. I thought the Heretics video where they went, we've got massive faith in stroke again. Zwyro. We've got massive faith in him. You didn't have fucking massive faith in him for the last 4 years in your fucking academy structure. Don't act like he's don't act like he's come on a fucking golden Pegasus out of the fucking woodworks to come and save you now. You didn't have any fucking faith before. It's so condescending that we adhere to this sort of weird veneer and mysticism in regards to like the favors that we offer each other. Just do the fucking work, lay the groundwork, and then we can actually reap the rewards of it, and it doesn't feel like an artificial thing. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
TLDR, do not give Ruddy match of the week when they join the league. Never do. No spotlight, no videos, nothing.
Do you think that's always been the like conversation I've heard from the production side of things, right? Is using match of the week as a promotional tool. I definitely lean towards your guys' side. I'm more just playing devil's advocate here, but I guess the part of the argument, right, is building the stories of players and all of this stuff. But I will say, I personally think like that can be done separately to match of the week. It doesn't have to be match of the week to justify video content, right? Like, surely we can do video content for non-match of the week players as well.
The problem is,
agreed.
My main problem with this, and like I want to just say this before we go any further, is that the danger here is that match of the week becomes this weird dog whistle proxy issue for the wider thing. I don't give a fuck about match of the week. Like, I don't care what it is. And I don't want people to be like, well, actually, because you're actually not realizing what the wider issue that lies beyond the rotted surface of what match of the week is, which is that in general, we need to build these things up to be better, like in regards to like rivalries and XYZ. Match of the week is just a byproduct of that, because the reason is you're locked into a binary state of what match of the week reasonably could be, because G2 and Fnatic is really the only thing that is going to be interesting. And the fact that they did it elsewhere, the actual proxy of it, the actual affectation of it is that MDKKC is kind of the only other way they could have gone with it. So they were like, fuck it, let's do something else for a change. That's the problem. Like,
yeah. I 100% agree with you across the board, but I do think we need to do like a better job of actually like building up a lot of the teams and stuff to actually be like, hey, this is now something that's more interesting. Yeah. But I will also give a caveat to that, because like, I'm not going to lie, like, I haven't really been able to talk about this. Chances are, if your team hasn't been on an LEC product, is because the fucking team keeps turning us down. And I'm not going to fucking point at people, but it's very frustrating when you're like, hey, I want to try and build these people up, and none of the teams are interested in actually giving us players or giving us the time of day to fucking shoot stuff with them. So I can understand to a certain extent as well, as you say, when it's like, hey, we have Fnatic G2 and we have Carmine Corp versus MDK. I'm like, I think it's a bad idea to have them on the same week, honestly. If you're planning out the league, put them 2 separate weeks so you don't have this fucking problem.
Yeah.
But if these are one Fnatic G2 that exists, not because of the content we put out, but because they kept fighting in playoffs, Well, then that works. And then we have MDK versus Carmine Corp because, well, it's Spanish versus French. It has existed in ERLs for years. We haven't had to build this. But it feels very difficult to actually build up these rivalries and tensions because we can't actually get teams and players to discuss what the fuck they think as well, which is also quite frustrating. So
I guess that's
I
kind
think
of what
there's so many different parts. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was saying with that. I don't want it to turn into some dog whistle thing. And I think that's the danger with so many of these things is we just focus and hyper focus on like this one outlet for the frustration. Whereas the reality is it needs to be tackled from like multiple angles. Like you're saying there's limitations in what you guys can do if the orgs won't step up to build those stories for themselves, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
mean, the
think
orgs definitely need to be the ones to do this. There was actually a really interesting stream yesterday. The Arabian League set up their own stream with the PR manager for the Arabian League on Riot's side, and multiple org owners, multiple team managers, and one player who definitely needed more PR training for is on that panel. And what big part of discussion there was at one point it turned to players need to focus more on their brand, they need to be streaming more, they need to be doing all this. And then the obvious response, which actually came from an org owner, was that, well, they could do that, but we have this player on the panel right now and none of us are doing anything with him. Right? The orgs themselves have to be the ones doing stuff then. It was kind of surprising to see it from the org side there. I normally don't hear it from the org side, which is a good amount of self-awareness, but I will say in that org's case, that guy is also a support player for the team. But the fact is the orgs need to realize they are essentially marketing apparatus around these players. And even if the players aren't comfortable, your job is to make them comfortable over time. You can do that on a week-for-week basis. You can gradually make them more and more comfortable with content until they're doing it over and over again. And obviously, the party animal over here is able to do that because he is hip and down with the kids, and everyone wants to be on the Ruddy video.
I'm only 24. You made me sound like I'm 30 man.
But you know what? Okay, 24 may as well be 30 in this scene. You will learn this as you grow older. You are as old now as you're ever going to feel. But a really curious thing is like when Ruddy started doing these videos, I know that and I know DonJake knows this because one of them ended up on his team. Other players on other NLC teams tried to do similar content to Ruddy. They bring it up to their org, and their org will be like, "Well, this is unprofessional, so we're not going to put it on our socials." You know, and this kind of stuff will get rejected. And it's like you guys are acting like you are already big enough in growth to actually be worried about sponsors turning you down for being unprofessional. You're not. You're not.
Line. I've used this since I got into the scene, like even years ago, because people used to tell me before I did anything, "You're a brand risk." What fucking brands do you work with? You don't work with any brands. What brands are we risking?
But it's also like the most successful brand that we've seen in Europe is G2. You don't give a fuck. Like when you look at straight up, you're like, if you look at half the shit they turn out, it's could potential brand risk, right? And then they made fun out of it, and now they actually have not only that fans enjoy the players, but they enjoy the team as well. Like they are fans of the actual G2 organization because of the way that they've handled this shit on social media. You're like, you can actually have fun and still create good shit.
Yeah. Let the people be pricks for now. It's all fine. Like it's all online. Just look away. It's all good. And you know what? Brand risk. Well, what brand? If the choice is between being able to have the amount of growth to actually have some ad space to sell, or trying to sell the tiny ass bit of ad space you have right now, the choice should be easy. Growth every time, 10 out of 10 times.
And all of this has led to Durex now sponsoring the LPL, which is just incredible.
That is so cool, actually. That is so cool.
The fucking advert for Durex.
It's so
it's like
funny.
a girl and a guy on the street, and they see a LAN cafe, and she's like, "Do you want a duo?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then they like skip across the street. It's like, "Yee."
It's so
I'm sure they're gonna duo in there. Yeah, definitely.
In fairness, though, I thought the Durex sponsor for the LPL was just in response to all the abortion scandals. So you know,
bit of column A, bit of column B.
I should not speak. If I speak,
Yeah, that
I'm in
joke was a
big
bit
trouble.
premature.
oh, sorry.
It's just
Moving swiftly on.
But I do think like there is a responsibility both from the players and the organizations to actually do shit with the brand, because it really does feel like the fact that you've got Madeline's Koi coming in with like eBuy basically leading at the forefront of, hey, this is now a brand and a person you can rally behind with this, and like having those creators like Skeen and stuff at the forefront as well, Carmetto there. It's like I think having these people involved is like giving people something to rally around and giving a brand identity to them that they can then grow off of, right? Which I think is something that is missing for, I'd argue, like the other 70% of the league.
That's really interesting that you bring up Ibe though, because Ibe didn't want to do socials when he was on LVP. LVP made him do socials. LVP
Oh, wow.
created Ibe. It wasn't the other way around. By
Yeah.
no means was it the other way around. That was basically mandated on top of him. This actually goes back to the league itself and how it uses the talent it has. It needs to be better, not just recognizing its own internal talent, but promoting it. They shouldn't be scared of another casual. They should be actively attempting to have another casual rather than having one handed to them on the silver platter and being unable to do anything with it.
I agree. And I think like it is funny now to see like the fact that Cadra's now go on to do incredible stuff, and we're like, hey, we're gonna pull him in every second that we can to do a chat on this or a chat on that, or how can we use him? We brought in like his plant one of the days on LEC to be like, hey, here's his planty gonna do a bit on it, right? Like he can actually use these, but I think that's the thing is,
Wait. Is Kedra's plant called Planty?
I don't know, maybe that's Spazzy.
I was going to say, because that's Spazzy's
Yeah.
plant. That's
Yeah.
famously
Yeah.
If he's called his plant Planty, like, get a fucking copyright strike in there right fucking now, Spazzy. Jesus Christ.
I
Sorry,
couldn't
anyway.
call
go
my
on.
plant Planty because of it, so I know.
But yeah,
I
it's
still
just-
need a name for my brand new, beautiful plant in the
Well, don't
background.
go with Planty, probably. I would
No,
suggest.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it Plant Eye. Remove the E.
Flowery.
It's going to be a problem if you get. It's going to
Mix
be a
it
problem if
up.
you get two of them though, because then you'll be confused, won't you?
Well, I'll go Roman numerals. The next one will be Plant II, and then,
Yeah.
Plant III, Plant IV. Which is, maybe a medical term, but we'll talk
Quit
about
while
that
you're
later.
ahead. Quit while you're ahead. It's trying to make this bit work really hard.
Yeah, I'm just fucking digging away, man. I'm in the trenches now. Sorry, I don't even know what you were talking about. I've lost.
I'm just gonna bring it back to LEC. It's like I think the two thing I want to ask you, lads, is like, what has been the biggest surprise for you this year at LEC? Like whether it's a team or a performance base or maybe it's like the way that the teams have panned out with like the players that have ended up where they are. What is it? Better year or eager to go there?
Coming into the split, the fact that Giant X got rid of Abadage and then held on to Peach was a big Morty mind blower. And then Trimby being let go of by Fnatic was another huge Morty mind blower. Heretics are reaping the rewards of that. That is such a good pickup for them. Trimby's entire career is an anomaly at this point because he got booted from Rogue literally as he was peaking, which is like, okay. And then he got booted from Fnatic seemingly over one draft that wasn't even on him, by the way. When you lock affiliates that early in the draft, you on blue side, you are inevitably left with no good options on support. None of the suggestions would have even vaguely won that game. He would have looked like an inter no matter what. And then the Heretics have grabbed him. They're doing super well with him. I love Zwairu, but like Yanko's Trimby complement each other so well. I'm not surprised Perks got replaced by Zwairu eventually. I'm just surprised it took this long. But the biggest one would definitely be the Trimby saga and Giants' insane choice of like roster shifts, which obviously it's not quite working out for him.
I mean, you're forgetting the other roster shift on Giants.
Oh, I've not forgotten that. I've not forgotten that. I wonder when this is published if what's happening with that guy is public yet, because I'm telling you, he's won the divorce on that one. 100%.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, you would know actually. Yeah.
I don't
Just,
even
But I'm getting kind of parched here, guys. If anyone's got any tea that they want to.
Well, I mean, I won't say what's happened, but I just think it's interesting that obviously my org sold Hedon to XL and then got them their best result ever in the LEC, and they decided to get rid of them after like a year of being there. So that's interesting. Doesn't seem like it's going too well for them at the moment. So,
Don't worry, he fell up. These guys
not wishing on their downfall or whatever, but
he must have had an insane agent actually to do all these moves. Anyway, please continue. That was me, by the way, to be completely clear, in case I didn't get someone.
No, I do think the Peach thing is bizarre to me. Like when I see him playing in games, it's just like it does not make any sense to me.
No,
But, I agree with you with the Trimby thing. It's funny to see because like Trimby, every team that Trimby goes to, I love that he basically brings this like one macro move every team he's gone to, which is we're going to overload a side lane at about the 22 to 26 minute mark and catch you off guard. And it's like the same. It was started with Rogue, he dipped, went to Fnatic, he saw the exact same play, and now he's moved to Heretics.
it's like a little.
And they
like
start to bring it
Ronaldo
into the
shot or
rep.
something.
It's so funny to me. It's like it's clearly just Trimby who's going like, we're fucking going for this, and it's so cool. But as you say, I think Heretics are now reaping the rewards as well, because I think Heretics do struggle a little bit in their team fights. So having this like, well, we're just going to catch you before we actually have the team fight is such a good thing to bring to that roster. So yeah, I think Trimby's such a great addition to that squad. 'Cause
That
it's
and
like
we
the
know
perfect pickup. Yeah.
That and we know from the voice comms that Trimby is like insane team fight shot caller. Like when the team fights happen, he basically just is the comms for the entirety of it. And Fnatic were clearly like losing that. They kind of ended up becoming the team that needed to just win off of an initial pick before transitioning to the rest of the team fight, which has basically led to them being a humanoid Talia dependent team at this point. But with Trimby, they were so complete. Trimby also did fit really well with the typical Fnatic 2-lane setups in late game. They like collapsing like this. So with Trimby, like, oh yeah, great, brilliant. No, let's just do this. Yeah, no, this fits perfectly with us like a glove. And on Rogue, when he did it, the problem was when he did the overload play you're talking about, he would then just run it on tier 2, like immediately after, because he had no idea of when to press B and just be done with the play. But he got rid of that. And obviously, when he got rid of that, he was just too good, so he just had to kick him. I have no idea what Rogue's logic is on any change they ever made. Oh yeah, Sigenda. Why did that guy even get kicked? At what point did anyone watch their games and think, oh, top lane is what's losing it? They seem to think this a lot. They seem to think top lane's like the most important role in the game, that if they just crack it, they'll get it right. But like, what happened there?
At this stage, I'm trying to figure out how many things Rogue is going to change until they actually figure out they just don't know what the fuck they're doing with
have any of you seen the funniest thing about Rogue at the moment, which is that Comp's girlfriend on Twitter slacks off his teammates every time they lose?
Wait, really?
What?
Yes.
Really?
Give me the at, give me the at, give me the at.
I tweeted about it the other day. It's the fucking funniest thing. And I think I've not hung out with them, but I think I've been in the same places and hung out with them. They seem lovely, but it's just so funny. Like, it's why I kept making the memes about the wags. It's so funny because it's just like, it's such like England golden generation like discourse that's occurring right now. It's literally, he'll get out of a game and she'll just be like, how do I report 4 professional players? Like, it's so fucking funny.
Wait, is it this girl, Comp, because he managed to survive his support's terrorism?
Yeah.
Is
Holy
it?
shit.
Oh my
Holy
god!
Jesus!
Yeah, it's fucking wonderful. It's so good. It's the best thing about Rogue at the moment. It's like genuinely the best thing about Rogue.
I mean, at least you know she has your back, right? But like,
if I'm in, I'm like, give it a wrestler. I'm like, come on, you got me to do this. Like,
of course,
so
she
good.
retweets my anti-Rogue tweets. Of course, she does.
Yeah.
Those are the only tweets of mine
she
she's ever
does know
interacted.
Comp is still there, right? Like he has to.
Trust
you
me,
imagine-
she's aware. Trust me. Trust
like-
me, she's aware.
That's why she's so fucking mad. Because she's still stuck with these fucking animals.
Could you imagine going into like scrims on Wednesday and you're just like, lads, I know, just don't look at her Twitter, all right? Just don't look.
I know, yeah. These
I
are
wish I
literally
could
your
put
friends
some-
and colleagues that she's just absolutely annihilating. Okay.
I wish I could report professional players for inting.
Yeah. Fair enough. Like, I respect it. Like, it's so funny. I made a tweet like making fun of her. She probably like went back at me, and I was just like making fun of her more. And then I watched the game the next day, and I just replied to her. You know what? You're right. Fair enough. Like,
Yeah, she retweeted your apology.
okay. That's the thing.
And then followed it up with "as you should." By the way, like she
Yeah,
established
man.
dominance over DonJake here.
One of the things I wanted to say at the top of the show was that although there's a lot of doom and gloom about sort of competitive performance and like parity between the two regions, NA and EU, as someone that considers himself somewhat of a satirist, this is a wonderful time to be a Twitter and a journalist and all of this. There's so much funny shit that is going on right now in our league and NA, like all of these different leagues. Love it. Big fan.
I feel like my favorite part of NA so far is them going in the new studio on the day that's shared with Valorant. And then who was it that was just outright fucking flamed it in the first interview? It was so fucking funny. I might have been Fudge. That was just like, yeah, you know, we're in the fucking broom closet while Valorant's on the main stage. I can't remember who it was.
Zazel.
Zazel, that was it. Yeah, it was Zazel. Yeah.
It's happening again on Sunday, no? Like no one's actually allowed
theoretically
to...
it happens every week, right? It's the day that I don't remember which day it is, but whichever day they share schedule with Valorant.
But Sunday, like the reason you guys have to turn up for work on a Monday is because Valorant finals are on, right? And no one's allowed to.
That's a Riot global rule, no?
Products.
That they don't
no
have
Riot
anything
products
else.
allowed to do it. Yeah.
I don't know, bro. My league's on 7 days a week. I don't know.
I'm more
think
talking
that's
the
what- I think-
Dagda
yeah.
works there. Yeah, sorry.
I think
You
that's why
guys,
we're
you guys even have like the postmodern structure at work. You know, like the difference between like the old boss who's like a dickhead, like you hate him, you hate your boss, and then like the new cool boss that's like, hey, how's the wife? Like, do you want to come in on Saturday? They're even like telling you to come and co-stream some of the games on the day that the league's not even on. Like, you really got, yeah, you really got
Gotta
to
go in on you now. Yeah, LPL official actually posted some clips of my co-stream today.
Yeah,
which-
sure.
Oh, okay.
There was maybe I shouldn't say this on stream, but there was no conversation there. There's just no like link
Just
to the stream.
hit,
Just
hit them with your content, right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
That'll
Well,
be an interesting.
they'll be
back
hearing
and
from my
forth.
lawyers. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Don't post my clips. Well, don't co-stream our games. Yeah,
Oh dear. Yeah, I don't know. It's fucking weird. It's fucking weird this split. I really hope summer we get 7 days again. Fingers crossed. What were you gonna say? Sorry, Rob.
Yeah. I know. I was gonna say for the whole Valorant League of Legends thing, I think that's why we're split up this weekend. So we're
Yeah.
like Friday, Saturday, Monday this weekend.
Yeah.
Because I think Valo's on finals on Sunday or something.
Yeah, it was more to you
I
than
know.
Munchables. I don't
Yeah.
know. I actually don't even know where Munchables is casting right now. I'm gonna be.
LPL.
I need to co-stream LPL. He
Yeah, I
cast
cast
it,
LPL
right?
as well. Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah.
cast it as well. Cool.
Yeah. The LPL's a weird one
Yeah.
because it's only Thursday to Sunday. So yeah. But then you can co-stream the other days, and that is much. You're not on.
Yeah. I co-stream some days.
You know what I've started doing recently? I've started. I'm like a freelance motivational speaker for teams.
Nice.
And I've started talking.
You and your
me
motto
AP
both.
Me and APA have like developed a close relationship. Where I've actually, no joke, this is a leak on this stream now.
So I was gonna
I
say,
have-
do you just take Comp's girlfriend's tweet and make them positive and just repeat them to the teams?
Just say the
Is that
opposite.
it? Yeah.
The whole thing is, I'm just building concepts because the whole thing, this is a wonderful time to be a satirist. Like I'm telling you. So like I have, unironically, and I'll leak this on the stream now. I have made APA watch Roy Keane highlights,
No fucking
Yeah,
way.
and he genuinely has told me that it inspired him. And that is a genuine thing that I've done in my life. And I'm allowed to do these things in the position that I'm in now. I love life so much.
For anyone who doesn't know, Roy
Sorry.
Keane is like an Irish footballer from Cork who just says the most unhinged fucking things ever. Where he's like,
great. Because he's a
go on,
pundit now. He's
Yeah.
a pundit now, and they'll be like talking about how there's a lot of stress involved. You can't blame him for having a bad game. You're like, well, that's his job. Like, and he just says all this like outlandish shit. And I just love it because we just need that attitude. Like, we need people that talk like that. Like, it's so wonderful.
my
Yeah.
favorite quote of his is like, they're talking about like who's gotten like the most red cards and stuff. And Roy Keane's like, I've never really gotten a red card. They're like, you have like the most out of everyone here. And he was like, I know I don't. And they're like, they start to read out the red cards he had. He was like, oh yeah, forgot about that one. And they're like, I guess to like the third one. And he's like, but he fucking deserved it, didn't he? I was like, for fuck's sake. It's like, that doesn't absolve you, obviously.
Fucking legend.
So good.
Oh man.
But,
All right, Dagda, I gotta ask you. What
Okay, go for it.
surprised you about LEC this season, this split?
That's good.
His day rate.
I don't know. I mean, from start to finish, I thought I was kind of hoping that what I thought Carmine Corp was going to be would be different because I thought they were going to have not that in like the players that are there, but from what I'd heard behind the scenes, I like thought it was going to be a team that could actually like basically do what we were talking about earlier, what that Mad Lions Core do,
You
which is
thought
like
they'd be the
play
MVP.
forward jungle, yeah, and like actually try and set up around bow and stuff like that. Just because I'd heard that they were getting like Niski in and this kind of stuff, and I was like, this
Yeah.
could actually be a team that could be really, really cool to watch. And then to see it just go the complete opposite direction is just made
Well,
it kind of a little bit sad.
They
Yeah.
could have easily been that if they just kept Shinkov. Shinkrov's probably the biggest name that I should have said
Yeah, true.
in my jungle diatribe early. Like, I have no idea like exactly. I mean, I've heard a rumor of who it was, but like allegedly, players just didn't want to work with Shinkrov again, even though Shinkrov's always been a core part of that team throughout all of its successes, bar the one where they just dumped money at Reckless doorstep. And even then, they didn't win. They didn't win LFL with that lineup. But the Shinkrov Targamas core has always been the big part of it. They were the only lineup that knew how to play around timings on top side, and that enabled Adam and basically gave him his career. That enabled Kabashard really well. and then suddenly they don't have Shinkrov anymore, and Targamas looks lost. He's not being included in plays. He only started being included in plays in like the last 3 games of winter. And yeah, I mean, they could have had that if they just kept Shinkrov, like straight up. Like they already had that. They did play that. That was why they were able to beat MDK when they were back in the league. They were a really good jungle centric team. They were really good at that aspect of the game.
Fair. Yeah, I think the other 2 surprises for me are like Heretics topside being as terrible as it was, because I thought like this was a team that would actually come back to, hey, we understood the game really well. We should be able to bring in a lot of that to the mid game. And actually like set up the map in a way where we can try and play through, like we'll play for side lanes, like Perks wants to try and play through that side lane. Like let's try and set up the map to do that. I thought Kaiser would be more of like a roamer that would like facilitate playing for mid and then letting Perks kind of do his thing through that side lane. But to kind of see that team fall apart and not really have the control that I wanted in the early stages was quite surprising to me, because it just felt like the communication was off, which I didn't really expect it to be as much as it was. And then I think it looks much better now with Trimby, as we already kind of talked about coming in. And the other one was how much airtime Swiffer's getting with all of his cams. Because I'm not gonna lie, it feels like every week we just get a Swiffer is stressed moment in the NEC, which I just think looks fucking hilarious.
But
And I
last
wasn't
time-
expecting him to be that animated every week.
Well, that's the thing. Last time I saw it, I was thinking, all right, now you're putting it on. Right? Like when it was the back and they didn't quite kill our Nexus. Now we haven't quite killed their Nexus. And he was just doing like the thing is, all right, you're doing that for the camera at this point. You know, like everyone's now in on the game. It's lost its novelty.
It's
No
like
one believes
say the line Bart from
Yes,
Simpsons thing.
yes.
Like, it's very like that. Like, I mean, I made a tweet about this recently. Like, I feel like, and we are talking about this earlier. Like, oh god, we have a real problem with just like, I mean, what did I describe it as? I think I had a good turn of phrase and how to talk about it. Go look for it. 1 second. It's very recent. So.
While Jake looks for that,
Yeah.
let's have a word from our sponsor.
Oh,
We don't have a
Jesus.
sponsor, but
We're looking for one.
hey,
If you would like
if
to.
you run an alcohol company or something like that, we kind of lean on that. So
Well, actually, to
way.
be fair, we're not picky. If you just want to give
true,
us money,
true, yeah.
we're happy with it. Yeah.
Even if you don't have a company and you're just kind of rich, like just
Hey,
you know,
if you've
DM
got, like,
us,
some money,
like
give
yeah,
us some money.
Look.
You want to give us some money?
yeah. Like I don't want to just
We're
straight
open
up
to
beg on the stream here, but like we really need your
Please.
money right now. So
We
if you go,
need
please, from the bottom of my heart, send me
please.
money.
No, they won't say it. They're scared of rejection, but I'll say it for them. Their real sponsor is you. You watching right now, your love and support from day one, back when these guys were like lowly MEA casters, has
Yeah.
been the oil that's powered the engine of Bevies with the boys, later Banter with the boys, and they need your money right now. Dear God, they do. Dear fucking, this guy spent 5 years on LPL, all right? Like, we're talking about some kind of like postmodern structure, 0-hour contracts. That's what we're talking about with postmodern structure.
Yeah, that's
like,
the
they need
panopticon
it.
right there, buddy.
Well, right there. They need it. They need it now because it's your love, support, and your money that they need to keep doing.
Do you want to know the best part about that? This is not a partnered channel, so there is no mechanism through the stream for them to give us any money. That's the best part. It's a completely fruitless shill, but I appreciate the shill nonetheless. Oh, God.
Yeah, so
Beautiful.
to go back to what we were talking about, the turn of phrase I think I had was like it's this weird like magpie inertia when we find this like new shiny thing constantly. We just like wheel it out on every occasion. Like it's like they've recently discovered that the coach cams is something they can do because they struck gold with like Swiffer, like his animations or whatever, him being animated, and then we just do it every time. And then like in the most recent SK game when I tweeted it, legit happened 8-9 times. It's just like Jesus Christ, because it's like it's weird. It doesn't just exist on the broadcast. It's like orgs do this as well. Like Pete is a really good example. Pete from Fnatic, like he came up with like a lot of like new formats, which I don't think like have like they're not like super creative, but like in terms of what they achieve algorithmically as just a form of sustenance, they're like good, right? But the problem is then that sets the standard for what is consumed in the diet for the next 4 years until someone is lucky enough to stumble upon something that is also good. And then we just copy and repeat that. It's almost as if the skills that welcome creativity that comes into innovation are not celebrated or like actually like put forward at all. Because we just have people like you have people in content departments. Their job is just to watch what other orgs do and then do that. Like even like someone came to me the other day and they were like, "Oh, you should look at what GX does. It's really good." GX does what the Sidemen and what Beta Squad do. They just do like studio recovers of that. Like, okay, cool. Like, are you gonna? So here's the thing: if we're gonna have a discussion about this, is that an okay idea? If we're talking about something we can do for money that like will probably have a return because it's proven as a format, sure. But are you also telling me that you get paid money to do that? Like you're getting paid a full-time salary to just like watch YouTube and be like, yeah, let's fucking do that. That looks fucking well cool. Like you genuinely get a full-time salary to do that. Like that is a joke. That's a farce. Like
it's especially funny
not
because
just
there
them,
is
by the way, it's other orgs,
but there is a business concept that deals with this, and it's called, very ironically, the innovator's dilemma. And
Yeah.
it's the idea that to break into a scene and actually start making the big bucks and break through like the old dynasties and the old method of doing things, you necessarily must come in with some new big creative edge, right? Like Tesla moving into the automobile industry, they treated it completely different, right? The problem is that when you make your way into the big bucks, now the better decision to make is just to rest on whatever already works, right? You're now dominating. You just want to consolidate that, be the new legacy guys that the next set of innovators have to do. So even though you began as an innovator, you are doomed. You are doomed to become stagnant. The irony is that none of these guys were innovators in the first place. They skipped all those steps, and they've just jumped
and they are
to
now
pure stagnation.
Smoking the fumes of a clapped out construct. Like they're just high in a parking garage somewhere, just fucking lapsidaisically. It's
so funny.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right. This is maybe controversial to people I actually know, but I'm just gonna fucking say it anyway. I feel like content in League in general is like that, especially within esports. Like esports League content, not just from organizations, not just from leagues, but from actual content creators as well, is exclusively co-stream now. It is co-stream and clips of co-stream. There is almost no actual like in-depth analytical content. Now, I will say there are a couple of people that are doing stuff, and occasionally we do get some really good stuff. Like LS did his item video. It's like 4 hours long, going into all of the identities of all the items. That kind of shit, fucking gold dust. But it's so rare that we get content creators within League actually doing any like real. I mean, you know, it exists, but you have to fucking search for it. You have to find it, and it gets no views for some reason.
I'll give you some perspective on this. Like, so as someone that like in the last like maybe since MSI, so how long is that? Like 9 months. Like found relative success with the YouTube channel. Now like majorly slowed down. I get really depressed uploading because it's like if you don't hit it constantly, you're just like back to square one. It really is like a Sisyphus like process. Like I had 3 podcasts that I put out, the Bwipo, LS, and then I think Nemesis one that did like 70, 80k, 60k consistently. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I took my foot off the gas for 1 second, and then suddenly next video you put out 5k views, and you're like, what the fuck? Like that's a 16th of like whatever's gone on. But when you get to that point, and with the stuff I do, it's like a little bit different. Recently, actually, it's been a lot easier because I go by the flow. But at least for like stuff I do at international events, like it's a ridiculous amount of effort that I was putting in for some of those. Like I was putting in like 10-hour shifts research for like some of them, just for like interviews that like I might not even get because you like it's not guaranteed or whatever. Like when you're doing that for the return, and like for a lot of these other stuff, like people who do like really good video essay content or analysis. Like, it is so fucking easy to do post-stream in comparison that I actually can't even blame them.
No,
like, it's like,
and it will be more successful because the thing with doing co-stream highlights is that they can be like you'll pay an editor basically 30 quid a video. That's the general rate that most of the guys are charging for these co-streamers. For 30 quid a pop, and the videos do actually make that much back really, really easily. They will get it out pretty much on the day that you have done that co-stream while you are co-streaming, and they will put in the tags, like say that you did it on G2 Fnatic Day, G2 Fnatic, job done. Now you just latch into all the searches on that day for the G2 Fnatic game. They click on you. Now the algorithm's like, oh great, people are clicking on your videos. We'll boost it in priority and click on it more. Or like Dom's co-streamer buddies literally put out I Will Dominate on their titles as well. They latch onto his popularity that he got from doing a bunch of this kind of stuff. You're better off doing that they're never putting any effort into a video. You want to latch onto those search terms. You want to be there on time. And that's just the best way to, even doing it a day later, editors will sweat at the idea that they are doing it a day later than on the
You're
day.
too late. You're too late.
So yeah, you're already too late.
Bro, I have I don't know, like this is one of the anxieties for me in uploading stuff is like because I'm super ADHD brained and like I don't upload things on time sometimes. Sometimes, bro, I have so many interviews that have like predated big things. Like I had an Adam Stryker interview that was like 2 weeks before the benching thing. I imagine if that came out.
Yeah.
I
Done.
had even at MSI, this is a good example. I had an interview where Niski alludes to Spanish fans just before he comes out of that interview and the big drama concludes on social media. If that goes up straight away, like it's, you know what I mean? Even I did an interview with Scout at Worlds, and I was asking him things about social media, and he went and put a story up that was like shit talking enemy team.
Yeah,
I remember at Worlds.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I'm
It's
not saying, like,
Instagram, right?
yeah, Instagram. Like, there's so much shit that happens like that. Like, I have a Perks podcast that I haven't put out where like is really interesting in light of what's happened now. Like, I mean, I'm going to release it, so I'll say it now. Perks said in that interview that he thinks that he's currently better than he's ever been, at least at the time of that recording. But it's interesting because over the course of that, no, but you laugh, and you're welcome to laugh. But the way that he explains it in the interview is like very interesting. It's actually like decent insight into how he feels that his career has gone and like recontextualizing things. Like he talks about the C9 era, for example, and stuff like that. It's just you know, if you miss the bullet or the train slightly, like it's such a news cycle in content.
Yeah.
He's currently performing less demonstrable harm to his teams than he has in a long time. I'll at least agree on that.
Fair. In the danger of rambling on too much, there was another point I wanted to go into, just sort of because this is like my realm. I'm very passionate about like content and creativity. You were talking about the innovator's dilemma there, which I think is something like it doesn't apply because obviously we've talked about there like no one's innovated. We don't have many innovators. We have people that latch onto things, or just even in the new era of like influencer orgs. That is something that is upheld by image. It's not innovation. It's more.
Can I small one sentence elaborate on it? Just to be clear, actually literally does apply because within the realm of social media, those YouTubers they're copying are the innovators. Esports has just never been the innovators.
Sure. Yeah. My point is more that, like, for example, innovation is less. It's weird to call it that when I think a lot of these like influencer backed orgs like Ibai, Kameto, it's more about the spectacle. And I think there's a new model of esports orgs, which I think is probably the most successful right now, which is basically like a religion model. They are like this religious head of state, and you have this sort of coda, I would call it, or doctrines that you follow that allow you to exist within the syntax of that org's fan base, which is kind of similar to what we're trying to do, but obviously in a way smaller scale. But my point is that although it is very difficult constantly to create new things, nothing is actually new. So that is the weird dilemma that exists in a lot of these organizations, that there is a navigation that you have to perform as a creative all the time, in that because nothing is new, everything is borrowed. Like a really good example, I always talk about this, I put this up on the podcast before, is a really good talk that Martin Scorsese once gave where he's analyzing the opening scene or one of the scenes from Taxi Driver, and there's 10 shots in a row, and he goes, this shot is from a neo-expressionist French film, this is from an Italian film, and you realize that he's taken 10 different things from so many disparate places that are so unconnected from each other, but he's managed to weld it and stitch 5 different organs into a new body where the lines of the stitching is so invisible that you wouldn't be able to tell. And that's what borrowing from the old to create something new has to be. But that skill set is not celebrated in esports whatsoever, and you won't find barely anyone that can do this.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, on the filmmaker point, David Fincher can do a really similar thing really, really, really well. What was that? I can't remember what that calling app was that you used to use during COVID that got really big during COVID.
Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom. So there's a cinema in LA that every time I was in LA, I would go to like every other day because they always did like directors Q&As. David Fincher did a Zoom call in that one. And in that call, every time anyone asked him anything, this guy was referencing like the lineage of each shot down to like 4 different films, right all the way back to like the 40s, 30s, the evolution of these shots. And it's like, this is the kind of nerd I want making movies, but this is also the kind of guy that you want running anything in esports at this point. They should be able to give you that history because they will understand when this stuff is good, why it is good, and crucially, what the next natural step is in that evolutionary process.
I'm not even gonna like lick my own gooch or whatever, but I do this it's weird. I
don't want to lick my own
no,
gooch.
you are
What a
good enough to
great
do
turn
that.
of phrase. Sorry, go on.
No, but the thing is, like, I want to like say this because I've worked with a few creative departments now on a few projects, like, and talked to them. Like, won't reveal who, but I got asked to do a really big project recently that didn't end up going through because the sponsor thought I didn't have enough followers, which was a shame, but it happens. But it would have been. It would have been a really big project, and to give you like not to reveal entirely what it was, but it's very much up my alley. I wanted to create something essentially like a talk show kind of esque vibe, but very much in the kind of what's his name? Who am I thinking of? I'm having another mini stroke. I don't know why my memory is so bad today. Sorry,
I am the only one drinking, right?
I'm
Munch is having a
drinking.
few.
My
Right.
memory is just terrific.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are you drinking, Munch, while he's finding this?
I'm on
Johnny
the.
Carson and Dick Cavett is who I'm thinking of. So I wanted to create something sort of in the tradition of like, because I've seen a lot of things, like the big thing at the moment is like, I saw like Mark Z did that whole catching up with Double Lift thing, which is a complete lift of obviously Eric Andre show. And I like that aesthetic, but like, so here's my central problem with that catching up with Double Lift show is it actually at a central point misunderstands what makes that show good. And it sort of just lifts the uncomfortability that it creates. But the whole thing of the uncomfortability is tied to this sort of like vaudevillian set. Like the set looks like a massive cake that's been baked. Like the vocals are all fried. The visuals of it are kind of weird, and it owes itself to this kind of surrealism. The surrealism is what comes across and what makes the viewer uncomfortable. And sort of like if you look at like traditional drama practitioners, you have like Brecht, for example, is a big fan of the proscenium arch. We're like viewing the tragedy as it occurs. Our Toad is a really good example, who I'm sure Eric Andre show like references in some ways. Our Toad was a drama practitioner that basically the idea was you went to the theater and it stunk and like your seats were sticky and like you got shit thrown at you, and it was meant to be this whole thing where like rather than the catharsis be felt as a projection from the stage on towards you physically were going to sweat out the emotion of the tragedy, which is what Eric Andre show is about. Like when you hear about how he prepares it, the AC is cranked up to 90, the guests are sweating during it. That's what makes the show good. And if you understand that at a core point, you can then begin to extract the shit that exists beyond the lines, because that's what you need to take to make the product. What you end up with something like Catching Up Double Lift is that you've taken the ostensible berries that you can pluck from it and you create something that is a faux imitation or a parody in some ways. That's kind of my general point, that if you can't understand that stitching, you're always going to end up with something creatively that kind of falls short, I think. And not to say that it's bad. In some ways, it's good. But if you want to push for something that will be good, it's that. And a lot of that is... Yeah, sorry, go on.
I actually think that an aspect this isn't generally talked about in is analysis. Like the actual overall analysis in the scene is absolutely garbage these days, and it has started to feed back into the organizations, into the way that they start to construct rosters and they understand roster construction and that they understand strategy and league. The jungle aspect I talked about is just one of these things, but like teams like Vitality and K-Corp could not exist without the kind of like public analysis we have right now. And a big part of it, I genuinely believe, is this move into co-streaming that Munchables was talking about, that as becoming like the prescient manner of income for all these guys. You are now encouraged to be watching LCK, LPL, LCS, LEC, and then what have you after that, right? All of these in a row, instead of hyper-focusing on any particular region, which is what we used to have. We used to have a clear LPL clique. We used to have a clear LCK clique. We used to have... Well, I was basically the only like LEC clique, and we used to have a lot of people fighting over being the LCS clique for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure why. But when you're able to do that, and you're able to look into the tier 2s of those regions, or even tier 3s, tier 4s, you're now able to talk about development, because you can trace multiple stories of how teams have developed over a long period. Right? I can tell you every strategic innovation that this current MDK lineup have done since 2021, which teams taught that. IHG teaching them about ADC priority on swaps, or Mad Lions Madrid teaching them about playing side and towards mid rather than mid and towards side. I can talk about all of these kinds of individual inflection points where they clearly learn something and change something strategic, therefore, afterwards. You can't do that if all you watch is tier 1. Because you don't know the strategic story of any of these cores coming in, any of these players coming in. And so when you try to talk about development strategy, you can only be talking on a theoretical level. You have no examples. but the broad way that analysts approach the game now can only end in this, and it's now fed back into teams. They don't care about tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, because no one cares about tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. So nobody has any kind of historical backing in how a team should be formed, because no one's even watched it.
And I think to dumb down what you're saying, to create a tagline of it, I think there is such an obsession with what, like, just the pure fact of whether something is good rather than why it's good. We never explore why things are good, which is really weird, because so many times you see players, I feel like, they're coming to the LEC that will have experienced some degree of success, and I think so many rookies have had their careers ruined because the GMs and the teams never bothered to find out why they were good. And then you plop them into a different context and scenario in which a team in which their job is so different and it's so stripped from their original context, and then they don't perform. And it's almost, what's that old adage? It's like, don't judge a fish by its ability to climb trees or something like this. Like, so often are we doing this?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Like,
Yes.
I mean, it goes back to the conversation we had about junglers earlier, right? Where like it's about the context of the team. It's about how your team plays around you and how you can actually impact the game. Like, I feel like we see it all the time, and I feel like we see so many teams that pick up a player because they're hyped. I mean, I'd actually be curious to hear your guys' perspective on this. How do you feel about Bo in that context? Because I feel like I'm sure you guys have some opinions about Bo, and I'm kind of out of the loop on Bo a little bit. Like, back when I was casting Bo, he was 10-0, perfect record in the LPL, and then he ceased to exist. I got told I'm no longer allowed to talk about this guy on broadcast because of a scandal. Because of
reasons.
But I feel like he came over to Europe. It started with like 2 weeks of glory and then kind of just crashed and burned. Do you feel like that's a similar story here, or do you feel like that's just a totally different issue?
No, Bo. I mean, so with Bo, I was never a believer. Because when I was watching his solo queue games, honestly, there was a weird point where me and Ellis had like the same opinion about Bo, and then Ellis just like forgot about it in week 1. And then after that, I just felt like I was getting gaslit by everyone in the scene. And I remember after the first split, where it's like, okay, this guy pretty much performed as I was expecting based on the solo queue stuff, because those particular things he's doing in solo queue, really early levels to start snowballing the games, you could easily prep that level 1. In competitive. It's never working, and I didn't see anything beyond that. That was great. This guy was not setting lanes the way that like Maxwell Memento used to do back in the day, and Lord knows I still have issues with the way Maxwell is on a fundamental level. He didn't show any of the things in competitive league that I thought you should show. So then I went back after that first split to be like, okay, maybe I should just watch the games from years ago, right? Because everyone's saying like, no, he was smurfing, like 10-0, blah, 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 all this stuff.
Yeah.
I opened the first VODs. First thing I see, Doinby and Crisp are on this guy's team?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Are you actually serious right now? This guy never had to think about the map while he was on that team. And then he's playing Pantheon half the goddamn time that he's actually having a good game. The map is being fixed for him by Crisp and Doinby on repeat. The best thing that the guy was doing was just extending on tempo to get a catch in the brush where the enemy would be like, why the fuck are you there? You should have reset ages ago. He doesn't have to, motherfucker. Doinby's fixed the whole fucking map for him because that's all Doinby does. Like, I was going insane. It's like, okay, I'm just getting gaslit on this. And we're still trying this experiment. Bo is not in the same era or like kind of archetype of player that like Selfmade or Shinkrov that he just replaced or any of these guys are. Right? Like he isn't a shot calling map control jungler. That's what you need in competitive if you want to build a team around. This guy would have needed Nisqy. You brought up Nisqy, Dagda. Nisqy basically at some point while he was in NA apparently just inhaled Doinby VODs. And when he was on Fnatic, he was fixing the map because Whippo just had to do top to bar on repeat over and over again because someone was on that team demanding it. And so Nisqy had to fix the map. And he was doing that. That was the great thing he does. You'd have to do that if you have Bo. But why would you even take Bo in the first place then? Like, I don't know, man. I felt like really gaslit on the Bo situation.
There is an element of you that I can't help but find funny when you do this, because I agree with you to a certain extent, and I think the logic is very plausible. But just hearing you say, like when you're critiquing Bo, like you do just turn into a bit of a Harry Redknapp, where you're just like, well, Bo, I mean, like we've got Peter Crouch, like we've got Jermaine Defoe, we've got Max Law, like it's just it's difficult to believe. You know what I mean? To an extent.
Well, it's difficult, but I can like point to where like the big thing Maxwell was able to do on all of his teams that set him apart from everybody else is he always fixed wave state on one side before shifting over to the other side. And you may think that's a simple thing, dear viewer, but go put on any Bovod and tell me he's actually doing that in any of his games. The Callista game with Upset was a very, very good example. It was bot into bot into bot into bot over and over again. And the fact that Cabochard was having an impact on Urgot in any of these team fights is why I still rate Cabochard really, really highly, because he is a phenomenal player. There was not even an opportunity of his lane to get fixed by jungler. He was playing completely solo. This is a concept that we knew about 7 years ago as being a really big thing. It's still not being carried through these days, and we've lost when we've abandoned junglers like Selfmade. And it's really weird that we characterize those guys as selfish when they would never leave the map like that, because they want to dominate the whole thing, not just one part.
So, I don't want to derail the conversation too hard here, but I do just want to bring up another player quickly and see. I know, Veteran, you've got a lot of European League of Legends to watch, so I don't know how up to date you are on a little old guy on a similar team called Milky Way, right? There's been a lot of conversation of him versus Bo, and general sentiment has been Milky Way is a much better player than Bo. I was hoping you were going to be like, yeah, I've watched hundreds of games of Milky Way, but alas.
I know Doinby isn't on his team because Doinby can't even get into the country right now.
His team,
so he's less likely to be. I mean, he's less likely to be a fucking fraud when he arrives over here eventually to replace Bo. So.
I think he'll go straight to America, dude.
Honestly, he'll probably just stay in China anyway.
I just hope that Milky Way doesn't open the email from Vitality that says, "Please match fix. We need a new jungler."
Don't worry, he'll have plenty more Mafia emails to deal with before he can get to Vitality's email. Anyway.
You know this guy has to turn up for work at the LPL, DonJake. You're not making this easy.
Yeah, I know. I've just, I'm not gonna sedate myself. I
am sedating myself.
That's what we do this show for. We're all, it's banter it's all banter, guys. It's all banter. That's why the title. That's why we changed the title, because this way, anything that's said, we can just claim it was banter. It's just a joke. People didn't get it because they've not got the Anglo-Gaelic sense of humor. See, I have to say Anglo-Gaelic because we're inclusive here.
Yeah.
Maybe you're an Anglo-Gaelic, mate. I'm not.
Oh. Wow. You actually logistically are. You just simply are. Geographically speaking, you just fucking are.
He's bi-Gaelic. He's bi-Gaelic. He's not full Gaelic.
Bi-Gaelic.
He's Gaelic curious. He Gaelic curious,
It's a sexuality joke, Dagda. Dagda looks like he's just been warped.
No, it's like it wouldn't be bi-Gaelic, it would just be bi-lic. That's the problem I had with it.
It's completely both true, based, and Gaelic.
Dagda's face when you said that, he turned into the dad from Billy Elliot. He's like, bi-Gaelic.
None of my watch.
Oh god!
Can we talk about?
We got that bit.
We talked about it earlier with the sort of the GX move and like the Heretics video. But it's one of the things that I wanted to talk about was these LEC videos that they've done for like public communications whenever they make a move. These are some of the weirdest things I've ever watched.
Did you see the Giants one?
Yes, it's so weird. They're so odd.
They didn't know that their current head coach was being a head coach before.
That's the best one yet.
How'd that make it through?
How did he get the job if you've not looked at his fucking CV? Like, what? How did you hire this guy when you don't know what he previously
That's my new
did?
go-to. I used to try to convince these players not to make these complicated graphics of everything they've done. It's like you just need to have something where the manager will get everything, even if he's just scrolling. Right? That was my previous argument. Now it's like, guys, they won't even know what job you've had beforehand. Look at this video, all right? And they put this guy in charge. They have no clue what he's doing.
But it's so funny because it's like these GMs and CEOs that they put in front of the camera for the videos. They look like They look like fucking Prince Andrew on the questioning. Like they just turn into a sweating pig. It's crazy.
No, actually, a non-sweating pig. Just want to clarify that non-sweating pig.
Sorry, it's just like they're just like. Have you ever been to the Pizza Express in the LVP? No, I never worked there, mate. Like, I've been to it's the one in working there. It's just like, what are they paying these guys to be in these videos? It's fucking mental. Like.
The Heretics one got me as well because I was watching this right before we did a Euphoria one of the days because it only just got released the night before and I hadn't copped it, and I was listening to it and Drake goes over my shoulder, just goes, "Wait, did they just say they replaced people and the team got worse? So instead of bringing the other person back, they replaced more people." It's like, and look, it is worked out, but it was like, how did you? There's no way you scripted this.
They scripted a video where, like, it genuinely, if you watch it, they inadvertently admit that they made a change and it didn't work, so they just doubled down anyway. And they were just like, and then they had the audacity. The thing that fucking is the cherry on the top of the cake for that video is they then had the audacity with the complete lack of foresight displayed with that statement there. They say, "Yeah, we've been planning to use Wairu for a while now. We've had that in the pipeline." Like, no, you fucking haven't. And then they also say, in the fucking statement that they were scrimming with Perks, and then they fired him on the day. So it wasn't even a plan that they had in the pipeline. It is like, fucking hell. But I love it because it always goes back to the thing that I said earlier. This is a wonderful time to be a satirist. Because anytime you put these fucking clowns in front of a camera, they reveal how much of a paycheck that they are stealing. Anytime you wheel them in front of the press, it's like having fucking Sleepy Joe, like, on the fucking thing. Like, these people are not ready. Like, bro, let's talk about the GX video as well. The GX video is it's not even comically scripted. Whoever edited that is the biggest comedian of all. Because that fucking video, literally, like, they talk about how, yeah, Hedon helped us get our biggest result ever. And the whole time they've got Cass over his fucking shoulder like it's fucking Cain and Abel and he's about to get stabbed in the fucking back. And they're just like, "But Cass has come in and he's fucking gonna do a great job." It's like fucking watching Darth Vader. It's like they've made a fucking Anakin Skywalker edit. Like they just accidentally created this great mechanism of comedy. It's not even meant to be funny. It's like fucking what's the character that's the radio presenter, that the famous comedian
Alan Partridge.
They accidentally made an Alan Partridge video. They don't even understand why it's funny. That's why it's such a great time to be a satirist, because people don't understand why they're being so fucking funny right now.
My question is, Jake, when is your faux roster video satire coming out? Because I can't fucking wait to watch it. I cannot fucking wait.
Would you say that to any Ellie Seog, by the way? To any Ellie Seog, would you say, "I can't wait for your specific bit of content I just hypothetically decided you're perfect for"? Right? Like, it's actually mental how much Ruddy have been able to do content-wise compared to all of these LEC organizations.
Agreed.
Like, it's actually ridiculous.
Well, you know, humble flex, but you know that video we made, the prank. I think the example you've said there, like the one thing that we did do is that time we were O2 last summer, we released the video. Obviously, well, full credit to Regan. As much as people give me creative credit, Regan's idea completely. To shout at the players and then have them record it. And there's so many intricacies in that video that were so carefully planned. Like, we made them record it. Two of the players who are German were in the DMs with each other speaking in German, which even more sells it. And then Regan pulls his Ethernet as he disconnects to make himself like lag in the video, so it seems even more real. And these are all things, this is what I mean. Like, you can't touch us. Like, we're thinking about these things. Do you know what I mean? And that video on its own, if you want to talk about the controversy it developed or whatever, a lot of people hate us for that now. That had more impressions across the original video and our apology, our fake apology, than Riot announcing the winner of MSI on Twitter.
I just want to say, like, not praise you over the stuff that you have been doing.
Yeah.
But players have been this creative, and they have just been told by their orgs doing this is a brand risk. It's just a brand risk.
That's the thing. Like, there's lots of them. There's lots of players that are really fucking funny. Like,
yeah.
And it's just, it's not celebrated at all. It's a real shame. Yeah. There's so much you can do. Like, there's, oh god. But the thing is, the beautiful irony, we go back to satire again, is that the only video these orgs can actually offer to the world that is good is one of these apology videos, where they just sort of just, you know, swallow their own tongue, do a roly-poly for a bush, fall off of a building and have a stroke all at the same time. And that is the true comedy of errors. That's all they could ever do. that is actual value in terms of creative output. It's so wonderful.
I feel like it's like the tech industry meta now to have your CEO talk. And I feel like
Yeah.
it's not just within esports, it's led to just glorious content across the entire world of tech.
It's wonderful.
Any tech
This
industry.
is a tech pro industry.
It's just fucking
is.
beautiful. There's so many fucking great moments of tech CEOs being complete knobheads on camera, live in front of an audience. I mean, Elon Musk is probably the best multiple example, but like, I feel like esports is, like you say, Veteran. It's a very much a sister to that industry, right? And like, I feel like we're now seeing that CEO shift. That's just like, yeah, I'll be in front of. There's a face to the organization. It's like,
But
I think that's it.
It works for G2, right? Like, it actually works for them.
Yeah.
But I think that's it. It's like, oh yeah, look, there's people behind it. And like, you can rally behind us because we're good people. And then you're just like, they just show their arses, and you're like, well, these are fucking idiots. Like, why the hell would you give these people a microphone?
I think,
or else it comes off on the other side, which is massively scripted, which is 10 times worse.
Yes. But you know what the other like funny thing is as well, and like this is not even a wider point. It's just a specific example of something that I find so fucking hilarious. It's like the interplay with like when you're kind of burgeoning upon this atmosphere within esports where we're starting to get like true like ultras in the football sense. You see a lot of KC fans to its detriment. Like I know you're a big proponent of like nationalism in the URLs, Veteran, and like the benefits it brought. You're one of the first people that ever introduced me to the idea of like MasterCard being introduced as like through that avenue of like the URLs and stuff like that, which is a really important economic point, but it obviously has its downsides. One of the downsides for me is obviously that the seriousness that they show has not caught up to the almost ability for people to not take themselves seriously. There is this embarrassment that you have in a lot of the caucuses of different locations in the ERLs. For example, French people are completely fine and they're not embarrassed to scream their head off and be like, I fucking love my League of Legends team. You ask someone in the UK to do that, UK people won't even look at each other on the fucking train. They are so embarrassed at the idea of that. The idea that they would have a favourite org and they would be screaming their head off at a League of Legends game. You get fucking slaughtered by your mates for that. So,
I mean, you're maybe not to remember this, but I actually do remember like 2015 Wembley was one of the best audiences that we ever had in Europe. Like,
I'll take that as a point, but like, my
fucking pussies.
Yeah.
My general point is that you run into this thing that is so funny, where, for example, when you look at a culture of ultras that has not caught up to that level of embarrassment, they haven't broken past that barrier, you get something like the Fnatic fans, like the Fnatic Dragons and that kind of ultra group, where the interplay between Sam Matthews and them is the most funny thing that no one talks about. Because Sam Matthews, just for the record, like if you go and watch like the Vice documentary that he's in, is just one of these like yuppie Shoreditch types. Like he just wants to be on a rooftop bar listening to some like shitty Burial remix of like a D&B track with a bunch of fucking women or whatever. Like he doesn't want to be fucking answering to like fucking like some guy on Twitter that like thinks he's on Arsenal fan TV, but it's like, where's it gonna end, Sam? Where's it gonna end? The recruitment of this org is fucking abysmal, Sam. Sam Matthews does not give a fuck about you. And it's so funny to see them desperately crave for this sort of like testimonial sort of father figure that they never had. Sam Matthews is not your dad, and he's never gonna be your dad. So, like, it's so fucking funny. It makes me laugh so fucking much whenever I see it. Like someone, there's the NB guy who blocked me, but he unblocked me recently. I met him. He's the head of that thing. He penned an open letter to Sam Matthews and was like making a series of demands. And I feel so fucking bad because yes, we should be moving to a model like in Germany where like fans and ultras have ownership of clubs and they can vote on these things or whatever. We're not there in the maturity, but like in the next 20 years, it would be nice to see things like this and have fan bases form more of like a bureaucratical body or whatever. But it's so funny that he thinks like it's almost like I don't know how to explain it, but it's just something that is so fucking comical about that. I love it so much. It makes me so fucking happy.
I want to just put a point of clarification. I really hope that you are still here if you just listen to everything DonJake said. But for more politically savvy among you, it's not nationalism that I was promoting to DonJake in that aspect. It's localization. Localization is the reason why Europe is going to survive the esports winter and North America is not. Because we have the ability to localize very heavily. And all sports is built on this idea of localization. Like we've talked about a little bit, at least, about how organizations are essentially ad companies that have infrastructure around these teams, and their job is to capitalize on these teams in an ad sense. They they don't seem to recognize that, but that is essentially what they are. Online advertising is essentially a bubble. I thought of doing a video on this a lot, but online advertising is a bubble that is bursting. The amount of share that you get from Twitch subscribers is a really, really good example of that. Bezos knows that's where the money is because they term it the adpocalypse has already begun. The internet is predicated on a big bubble that is about to burst. But esports will remain because of organizations like K-Corp and because of organizations like Mad Lions, Koi. The future is a big blue wall, and that is a good thing because fans do not let their teams die. I'll always love to talk about football with regards to this. Like of the teams that joined the Premier League back in 1923, only 4 of them don't exist now, and we're talking 80 to 90. I've been drinking too much to remember the exact number. Teams in total. Only 4. Okay, only 4 of them actually went fully bankrupt. The rest of them, by sheer force of will of their fans, have remained, and these guys didn't really start to turn a profit until about 2013. Like, profit was the big lie everybody was pushing as an economic virtue to get franchising in, but it really doesn't matter. The NFL is barely even making any profit at all as it is.
Wasn't it in the Premier League like 4 teams last year were profitable out of the whole league?
Yeah, it's indeed, sports is not profitable, but sports is safer than banks. Like, most of these teams have actually laid most of the safest banks in the history of the planet by a significant margin, because either a big benefactor will come in, or like Derby's a really, really good example of this. Like, one point, a big benefactor came in and they just like bankrupted one company and reincorporated it into a new one. Another time, the entire community as a whole came in to essentially buy the org out and get it out of all of its debt. Like, multiple times, these guys could have fallen under. K-Corp is never going to let K-Corp fall under. The French will never let K-Corp be the be-all, end-all of French esports. Same with Mad Lions Koi. Mad Lions Koi is essentially an alliance of Movistar, Mad Lions, and Koi that has now surpassed Giants. God knows what they're doing as the preeminent Spanish organization. But if they fall, Lord knows some other apparatus will come up around the Spanish people. America has none of this. There's no way to do an organization stateside that generates this kind of
thing. And that's why Match of the Week was Mad Lions Koi and Carmine Corp.
Yeah, that's why it's cringe, because this will happen eventually anyway. Like you can't force it. They will have results eventually because they will exist longer. They will probably outlive G2 at the current rate because G2 has moved away from localization. That's a big problem with them. Riot are going to move
complete
further.
nomad now. Even in other sports, like they're a NA Valorant team now, right?
Yeah, I mean,
they do stuff in China with Dota as well, I'm pretty sure.
Riot want to move more into localization of Europe. They love the EU Masters system, the EMEA Masters system.
Are you sure about that, pal? You seen how much they cut the prize pool down to, buddy?
I said they love the system. They don't love EMEA Masters. They love the system. They've actually, since 2018, behind the scenes, been trying to find a way to make that the system. They've done the job for them, right? Like, Riot didn't found the Spanish League or the French League. These guys founded themselves because of the local appetite for League of Legends that they could tap into. And what DonJake was alluding to, of like MasterCard sponsors, stuff like that, these guys were getting those sponsors because if you are a big sponsor, you want to target Spain, target France, target Germany. You can't do that on the LEC broadcast.
It's the big problem.
So these guys are getting big ones.
It's the big problem, like I know from like being an org owner in the NLC, for example, it's the big problem that like any TO has ever had with the NLC is that you are attempting to contact, like, if you want to go to Coca-Cola, they're going to be like, what you want, like, talk to our Swedish department. And be like, no, it's Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, and the UK.
Exactly.
Well, they're like, well, how the fuck do I do this? Like, you want me to get on the phone with the 4 other departments? And we like, no thanks. That's like hassle. Like,
that made the Arabian League stream yesterday with all the owners and the rioter and stuff so interesting because it was the same conversations I have had in meetings at NLC over and over again on the business end, right? Like, if I'm consulting with them, it's these same conversations. These guys are like, okay, localization is the game plan, but we're not really capable of doing it because of the way that we've all been lumped in with the other regions that haven't figured it out, because Counter-Strike dominates the Nordics and no one in the UK gives a flying.
we're a FIFA region.
Yeah, literally, we're a console region. We're an Anglo region. The Anglosphere cares about console.
I actually, I don't know. It's so weird to me. Maybe I exist in. Sorry, go on.
I just no. You go. You're a guest. I'm here all the time.
I feel like I maybe exist in a complete bubble of like personal experience, but like there were so many kids at my school that played League.
Yeah, right.
Like in the UK, and like I grew up. Like there's so many people I know.
And World of Warcraft dominated the UK. Like. Where did it go? Where did PC gaming go?
RuneScape, bro. Old school
Oh,
RuneScape. Back
seriously?
in my we
Big
just
time.
called it RuneScape back in my days.
It was
That
just
dominated
RuneScape, that's
every
why.
school. Yeah, we just
It wasn't old school. It was-
You weren't that cool.
Just-
That was just the name, dude.
I was gonna
I
say
know.
console was everything in Ireland. Like there was like 2 people that played PC gaming. They're the Outcast because it was like, well, we
that's
can't
my
play with you.
experience more.
Yeah. It was all like,
don't
hey,
know,
we're
I
gonna
think
play
I
Call of
had
Duty, we're gonna play Halo, we're gonna play Gears of War. Yeah, you had your FIFA lads as
dude.
well. It was just like that.
It was like that at my
Like,
school as well. Like it was just like who, like your friends were pretty much determined by like who had Xbox, who had PlayStation, because those are the people you play with.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a weird thing
Yeah.
where like I don't know, like very specifically to my school, this maybe doesn't exist anywhere, or like at least I don't know like other mates I had from other schools, but there was like 30 kids in my year
Yeah.
that played League. Out
Dude.
of like 200.
Wait,
Which is, like,
everyone at
weird.
the skate park.
was-
Everyone at the skate park was on PC. Like there was everyone at school. You know, I had a lot of Xbox friends and everything like that. But at the fucking skate park, we were a PC gang, and that's just the way it was. I don't know, mate. Like, look, all of this is totally anecdotal anyway. But
Someone in chat has just said they went
I'm
to
with
school
you.
in Hackney. Which school did you go to? Mossbourne, City, Urswick, Petchy? Let me know, bro. I know all of them. I just sound like a non saying that.
yeah,
went to
I was gonna say it. I didn't want to say
I think I
it.
went to school there. But, like, it's not, you know, it's not recent research. I've known it since I was a child.
Fucking hell. Oh God.
What was I going to say?
I don't know.
bro, there was a
You've
kid at my
thrown me with your
school.
weird noncy comments.
Sorry, mate. Apologies. There's a kid at my school. There was like a celebrity in our year. His name was Mustafa. He still plays. I met him at MSI like randomly.
Oh,
He
nice.
was like D1 when we were like 14. So like season 4, season 5. And like being D1 in season 4, season 5.
Yeah,
like,
that's legit.
It's the equivalent.
Yeah,
Like, I think he's like
That's
even
really good.
He's GM now. Like I think he's like 700, 800 LP or something. But he we used to fanboy him because this is like the period where like actually he's banned on Twitch. You can't talk about him. Famous UK streamer that plays TF. That guy. This is during his era when he was the biggest streamer. And this guy, our friend from school, used to get in game with him all the time and like beat him because he played TF as well. So he would lock his TF and then play it against him and like slap him about.
Amazing.
And we would be like,
Wow.
oh my god, Mustafa. And I'd be in like maths lesson with him the next day. I'd be like, I saw you versus Grove School yesterday. That was so fucking cool. Oh, I said his fucking name. Fuck.
Dude.
Well,
fine.
now that he knows,
It's fine.
well, now that he knows he's into that sort of thing, I guess so.
Fair play.
Yeah, he just gets denied a wave, gets cooked it, and he's like, "Yeah, this is the shit. This is the fucking shit." Yeah, I had a friend as well that was like, he was a YouTuber for a little bit called 4Paws, and he was like Diamond 1 back in the day, and he always used to play with us, and we were fucking shit. I was like the second best guy in our group, and I was like low plat. And like the rest of the gang was like golds and silvers, and he's always playing these normals with us, and he's always stomping his lane, and he's always carrying our fucking asses. And I never appreciated back then how much being Diamond 1 actually meant. Like
Yeah, it's mental.
I knew he was better than me, but now with the beauty of hindsight, I could see like the sheer canyon in like game knowledge between him and literally everyone he fucking knew. No wonder he quit the game, because like, who the fuck is he going to talk to about the game that actually has any fucking clue to even remotely the same level of him? Like, it must have been so boring to play these fucking normal games with us where he's literally just pub stomping some dude every single fucking game. Like, and that's just the way it was back then, because you play with your mates, right? But like, I don't know. In
He just wanted to
hindsight,
hang
I
out
always
with
feel
you.
bad for him.
Yeah, it's
He just wanted to
actually
hang out with
funny
you. He loved you.
because that's kind of how I started League of Legends. Because I got super into StarCraft 2, and my mates used to play with me, and we'd do these like 3v3 games, right?
Yeah.
But I like
I've
started
been
watching
there.
a shit ton of Day 9's like dailies. So I just got like not amazing at the game, but I was like pushing diamond in it. So like relatively high tier for like where my mates were, which was what my mate trying to go for the end game unit off of one fucking base 20 minutes into the game and not understanding what he was doing wrong. So
Right.
we had a miserable fucking time in these 3v3s. But it got to the point where I was just like, I can't play this game with you anymore. You drive me fucking insane. We need to find a new game. And that's why I started playing League of Legends. And then we're all shit at League of Legends. And to this day, I'm still shit at League of Legends. So it works out perfectly where I can play with my friends.
Oh god. Yeah. It's crazy how it's all moved on, honestly. And now you can't even play with your friends anymore. You gotta play fucking Flex Queue. God damn it. I want to slightly move the conversation on. I just want to quickly say, DonJake, I'm not super in the loop on the ERL stuff, but I heard that you had a 1% playoffs run.
Yeah, we did.
congratulations. Do you want to tell us the story? Like, because I feel like I saw it on Twitter. I didn't really look into it, but
I'm gonna make a video after this split. I should have made it already because it's like if we don't make it tomorrow, then it's kind of a sad ending. So I'm hoping that because we played tomorrow, by the way, for anyone that doesn't know.
Where do you play? What time?
NLC LOL, and I believe, God, it's bad. I don't know what time it's at.
That is quite bad.
6 p.m.
It's because he's on 24 /7, right? He's always on.
Absolutely. It's at 5.
The game
5
doesn't stop for you.
5 GMT, 6 CET for you Euro heads. Yeah, we play a qualification match, winner of which goes to EUM.
Oh, fucking
big-
yeah.
You
big
mean
time.
EMEAM?
EMEAM. Is that what it's called?
You're at, mate. Yes.
I guess it must be.
Yeah, it's EMEA Masters, dude. I went to yeah, I've been drinking. When I was at the MSI event playing, the quick shot was just yelling to the crowd, like between the games, right? Like, if you've never gone to one of these, they do stuff with the crowd, like they'll like throw free.
They had Commander on a cannon.
But at one point, Quickshot wanted everyone to scream, "We are EMEA," and I was just like, "Oh god, I hope they paid him a lot to say that." You know, it just doesn't. No one relates to it like they relate to like EU. Right? We are EU. Everyone would have done it, even in the UK, which is what that was in. We are at EMEA doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but that's just the way things are.
Bro, we're literally not even EU anymore.
You know what we are? We're EU West, right? Like I have always had this theory that we've jokingly termed, but I'm going to seriously call now server realism, which is that what's actually competing at Worlds is the individual servers that everyone is competing on. So EU West, NA, so obviously they're screwed. The Chinese super server, the Korean server, these are the actual things that are competing. And so I've always pulled for Russia, Turkey, and MENA players to not count as imports into Europe. So I'm actually really glad that EMEA is a thing because I've wanted all of these guys to not count as imports for a long time. But still, the way that they have termed it, obviously, they've kind of lost that resonance people had because no one really has that allegiance to the server. If the server had always been called the EMEA server, I honestly think that might have made a difference.
I think it's also the fact that, like, quite famously, Quickshot was like, "What is your region? EU, EU, EU." You know, like that was such a fucking. To my mind, that's like one of his biggest calls, even though it wasn't an in-game call. I feel like that was one of the best things, like in terms of hype that he did.
They ruined it. They ruined it. They paid him to do it differently, and then they kicked him. My God, actually, like I don't know. It you couldn't get the audience to do the EMEA chant like you could get them to do the EU one. He was really good at the.
I'd love to see the advertisement, like the ad fucking meeting for that. There's like. EMEA, I don't know about that. It gets the people going. It's provocative.
Fantastic.
But to circle back to Miracle Run, I think we basically just figured out we have like a very Labara mobile approach business model to NLC, where it's like I go off and do my shit at like Worlds and MSI, and I bring eyes, and the whole point is like I don't really see the point of investing that much money in the actual league. It's more about like bringing eyes into it. Which like weirdly no other team does because they seem to like acknowledge that they're living in essentially the equivalent of like what Bush did to Afghanistan, and then also have the also same mentality of being like a crab in a bucket, where it's like we should be creating holes in the bucket rather than trying to climb out of it and let the water come in. Do you know what I mean? It's like weird that they also the weird thing with like anyone that you'll meet from NLC is they have this weird victim mentality.
Yeah,
where it's like they recognize that the NLC is shit, but then they will still exist in it and shit in it and piss in it instead of like going and trying to find like, you know, shit from other villages to like kind of bring in. So that's like my mentality for it. But even so, I wanted to approach, if I do anything, I want to put F into it. So I worked with a guy who's doing a lot of big projects in regards to like data analysis in the background. And he's working on like a lot of scouting programs. And I used that along with like eye test and speaking to a lot of other people. Weirdly, one of the people that showed up on this program, like absurdly in the stats, obviously the program is essentially, was one of the people that showed up weirdly in the stats was Natty Nat, who's a jungler I already had in winter for the Aurora Cup. So we just got him anyway. Like he's a very talented player, been rank 1, bit of an OTP, but like skilled enough to play the other champions. It took him a little bit while to get good in the season. But yeah, and then Alex was another one who, like, veteran from casting, will be like, this kid's fucking good. Like, this kid's really fucking good. He's really,
I can
really,
trace
really
his
good.
development too. So there you go.
Yeah, you know.
He has had
Bill-
really clear points where he's go on. Sorry, I've been
Yeah,
thinking.
for sure. Built as well, rank 1 player, and then like Silky is just someone I wanted to work with for ages because like when he had his debut in the Prime League, I think he was like a top 4, top 5 ADC, and like that split of Prime League was like a really, like that was a time where I think a lot of AD carries that we consider to be like top tier ERL talent were coming through. I go and look at that split actually. Like, I know that was one of the splits where like Take Set was playing, for example. It's like one of the first splits that Take Set was playing.
He's smurfing in TCL actually. Shout out to him.
Yeah, I think TCL. I think Take Set is like a ridiculously good AD carry. And then also he's playing in a league with, fuck, who am I forgetting? Like Harpoon, who I think will come really good in the near future. Reptar was playing at that time. Obviously, doesn't play as much now. Yeah, so there's like some really decent AD carries, and I thought he was really good then, and I've heard nothing but good things since. Obviously, he's Danish as well, so he's an LTR. But he had like an injury, like he had like a really debilitating nerve injury that meant that he stopped playing for a while. And so like it was for ages, we were just like, fuck, is he ever gonna like fix his injury? Is he gonna come back? And we wanted him in last summer, and then we wanted him in winter, and it just wasn't the time. And then finally in spring, the time was there for Silky to come and play. And I think, I mean, you guys obviously don't watch NLC, but I'll say this to Veteran. I was saying this on Twitter earlier. I think Silky's the most underrated player in the NLC by far.
I was pushing for MVP for him in one of your recent series actually.
This guy, I think he's like, for him, I don't know if you've seen the All Pro, but like for him, like Ginger obviously gets first or whatever. Fuck it, like I test, like he's the best AD carry in the league. Like they're winning the most. For Rusty and Mervs to get it over him, I think Silky is.
Dude, I actually like I didn't get reprimanded for this, but did you see my reaction when like Lenny was given like the rookie of the split? I was what? Like
who,
like
I don't want to get into NLC politics too much because we're just diverting the show. But who did you think the rookie of the split was? If we're just going to
I cannot remember if I put either Romeo or Alex on it. But it would have been one of those two.
Those are two fair responses I would have accepted.
Because for me, Alex's development was insane, but Romeo was actually like MVP material on his team. He was doing everything on the map.
The thing that people don't talk about Alex, and also as all going, I'll trash my players and sing their praises. They need to be taught realistically. The good thing about Alex and why I would give it to him is a lot of people like, and I heard this on the cast, like people were saying like, oh, Alex is the reason they win every game, and at a team that has struggled even in the first half, 3-7, he's there every single time. Alex is also the reason we lost a lot of games. Like if you go and watch them, like he's the sole reason we lost a lot of games. So it's like that duality, and for him to be in a position where like I don't want to explain why he got better because that will help our opponents. And then if you
Dude, he was like this in Italian division. He was literally like there was this beautiful Irelia game in the Italian leagues that I was trying to tell people about, where he literally like he died 3 minutes in, and then when he respawned, he TP'd and just insta all in, then died again, and then he walked back, and the first thing he does is he queues to a minion, and then insta queues on his opponent and just tries to run them down there. He's like 0-6 in like 5 minutes. It's the funniest
he's like
thing.
if you want to talk about like, the whole like MTG color theory, if you like ascribe to that, he's like pure red player. Like this guy is like a complete orc. Like he's a complete orc. But
I like that. That's potential right there. That guy knows now that that was dumb. For sure, he knows that was dumb.
You can teach like the things that need to exist beyond the hands. You can't teach hands. He's got hands. Like,
this is a common thing we talk about in LPL. It's like having a player that is fucking good and willing to fucking punish people is way more valuable than having a player that knows how to play safe and farm up. Like anyone can fucking play safe and farm up. You just need to learn to CS and not fucking die in lane.
Yes.
Like it's really hard to teach someone to fucking go in, you know? You need the players to have that fucking mentality.
You can't personality transform.
I'll say this on record now, and quote me on this for years go future, whether it's with us or with someone else. If Alex works on the things that he's bad at, and he develops, like he needs to like work on like confidence and stuff like this, and he's in good organizational structures, this kid's going to the LEC, and I've never been more confident in a player that I've ever worked with. Never in my life. Like one of the things I saw from him, and this is something, if you go back and look at the first game he watched, I think this guy is like, as much as you talk about his like orc ability and his ability, like he hits skill shots, he's got good hands. His team fight IQ is like, I watched him do something like. Do you disagree or agree?
Oh, I don't think that guy hits skill shots. That's why he plays mostly melee champion. Silky Smash hits skill shots.
Fair. Anyway, there's something he does in the game against Verdant, opening game with a split, which is like he is playing Syndra in this front to back comp, where generally Syndra's will just play front to back and rally off spells because he's got enough CDR by his third item also. He does a flank around, so he's red side, so he does it around blue buff bush, and he goes around because he has a pink there. And he finds this flank where if it works, he would have just eviscerated enemy team. And the only reason it doesn't work is because Natty replaces pink because he doesn't know what's going on. And like when I saw him do this, I was just like, who the fuck does this? Like he's thinking, like he finds this like weird, like he plays just outside of vision, goes and finds this flank on this pink, and he would have just completely eviscerated right there. Like it was
because he's an assassin player. That's it.
Yeah,
All
no, that's what I
assassins
mean.
think like
Yeah,
this, right?
yeah.
But like he's using Syndra as a bridge, which is really interesting because normally with this kind of player, Ari is actually the bridge.
Yes,
but
yes, yes.
Ari has been fucking useless for years until literally
I was going
exactly
to say,
now.
until right fucking
But-
now.
Yeah.
But Alex therefore just moved to Syndra, which could at least one shot at some point. But he plays it as if he's playing Yone. It's so funny to watch, actually. But it
Yeah.
is good. Like, I don't think it is a bad thing that he does these sorts of things. There were two ways I could approach this, and I'm just going to go with the one where everyone would recognize the names. I will never forget this story Soaz told me of the first day that Caps was on Fnatic with him, and he decided to play GeoQ with Caps. And in game, Caps literally, the first game he played with this new mid laner they were trying to convince him about, he went 0-22. And at one point, he says, like, I'll find the clip of this for you guys afterwards, so you can put it with this if you want. But
That's
like,
amazing.
at some point, he just says to him, like, you know, if you don't die, I think we can actually win this. And apparently, Caps just straight said to him, but I think this is good, no? And it's like that mentality. Caps knows for sure on those 22 deaths which one could have and couldn't have worked. He'll never be left wondering. That accelerates his development.
Yeah.
Alex is in a very similar position.
Yes,
That
yes,
the
yes.
manner in which you make mistakes says a lot about how you will develop as a player. So I'm with DonJake here. I would bet on Alex before a lot of other people, even on his team, to be able to be LEC caliber one day. I'm wording that properly because that doesn't necessarily mean you go to LEC, unless obviously the star mid laner argues with the GM at some point, in which case all bets are off.
Well, you know, the argues
Late
with
enough in the
the
split.
Or
with the GM,
he
his
gets a
career will be
really good
taking a abrupt
agent.
end.
If he gets a really good agent, maybe he'll one day get
Oh yeah,
LEC
no,
as well.
I mean, but then it's just easy. Like that's just unfair, to be honest.
But yeah, like beyond like talking about the team a little bit, basically we just started like really badly. We didn't have a coach for ages. I've talked about this on the broadcast a little bit. We've got a guy called Wolverine in who's just been known for having like really like out there takes for ages. But I like really appreciate his Veterans looks angry.
I've been drinking, DonJake.
Don't bring it out.
Go on.
Yeah,
I praised Wolverine on broadcast, to be clear.
yeah. But in any case, like
like
the
I'm
whole thing
playing
with Wolverine is I saw like he's a very incendiary figure on social media in a way that he has thoughts about the game and he doesn't like let other people like bully him off of it. Which no matter if you disagree with someone, if I thought he was just spouting shit out of his ass, then it's fine. But there is something I admire about the kind of Diogenes like quality of someone that is just, you know, having a wank in the town square and telling everyone that they're just, you know, all your ideas are shit and worthless and everything you believe in is great is a lie. I enjoy that. So I wanted to at least interview him and speak to him because I feel like I can get like a judge of character from that. And then he writes me back. He's like, hey, I can do it in 3 days, but I'm homeless for the next 3 days. So immediately I was like, well, what's going on here? There's something here. And he's like, and when I talk to him, he's basically like, has this whole like backstory and he's like a very similar age to me. So I was just like, well, I almost want to give you this because I want you to show me you can be good at this. And he, unironically, over the course of the split, there's been some drafts where like he posted a tweet about it, like 15-hour draft prep, goes in, just smashes people in draft. Like you clearly can see he's developed the team. We went from being a 3-7 team to making our miracle run where there was a 1% chance. We won 4 games in a row and it wasn't even guaranteed. We had to rely on another team being another team to go through, and we made it through. And yeah, like a lot of it is down to him and the players. Like it's been really lovely because also as well in the playoffs, like both splits last year we finished 3rd in the regular split. The spring one was the real travesty because obviously we sold Heat on to Excel and we kind of just boomed from that point onwards. And then we got 3-0'd in the first round of playoffs, and I was like, fuck, we just spent all this money. Like fuck, like we didn't even get to UM. It was meant to be like, because when I get to UM, it's like the whole thing is like, oh, everything I do at NLC that should go viral but it doesn't because our league is shit and there's no one watching. like, wow, there's so much of a more expansive audience. And then in summer, we obviously finished third as well, and like we lost in first round of playoffs again. So I was like, wow, it doesn't matter what you do. You sort of, there's a bit of a curse. So for us to 3-0 first round of playoffs the other day as well, and the manner in which we did it as well, because like a lot of our wins did come from Alex popping off. For Natty to be the one that like also was just like completely fisting the entire series was great. And now we play a series tomorrow, and honestly, I'm proud no matter what happens. Like if we make it, it's fucking great. It's more evidence that the good guys win sometimes. But if we don't make it, we'll be back at it in summer. You know, that's great. Like we've developed so much. You know.
I want to be really clear about the positives of Wolverine here. Like, I praise Wolverine on broadcast because it's not that common where you see a coach join a team and they make a demonstrable strategic shift. But Ruddy went from being a team where it was, no offense, it was incredibly solo queue. Every player was playing as you would expect them to behave based on previous VODs I had watched of them. But they started playing as the unit with Wolverine there in a very specific way. They played these wide map states where they would shift jungle support into a specific side from weak side and then go straight for reset. And they would play this map out over and over and over again until their enchanters and more defensive champions had essentially scaled really hard. They basically were doing jujitsu against teams that are basically just full of boxers. Right, that's how they were doing. No one ever disagreed with Wolverine on that method of playing. And I know it's Wolverine because I even cast his games when he was over in NA Challenger Series. I actually did do some work for NA Tier 2 when Wolverine was on there, and the drafts were the same. Well, similar. Obviously, he didn't have a Zed player on the teams at the time, but the drafts were very similar. I'm really glad that he enabled the Zed from... but I don't know if you know this, but I was hyping up Alex's Zed for ages. He just wasn't picking it until Wolverine was there, and then when Wolverine was there, they finally started picking it. And
we just kind of realized it's like really good into his ear, and everyone was playing his ear.
To get to my point, the issue people have with Wolverine was not his tweets about the game. It was that he made these tier lists where he rated every coach, and he was rating anyone that hadn't done content ridiculously low. And when any of them were like, we're too busy literally doing our fucking jobs to do content, he called them cowards. And he said that the reason that they weren't doing content, I don't think it's a laughing matter, by the way. He said that the reasons that they were doing content or weren't doing content was because they didn't know anything about the game. And I think that's an insane cope that many content creators have made to delegitimize people who are actually putting the work in. And very frequently when these content creators have gone into the scene, they have been completely unwilling to put in the work, and they've been fired summarily because of it. And I really don't like that they would use their platform that they've been able to build up because they're not putting in that kind of work to slag on all of these people who are doing that work. I'm glad Wolverine is putting in the work, and I think he has had a really, really good job on his team, but that doesn't mean that he was right to make those comments, or that was wrong for people to disagree with him for those specific comments. I want to be very clear. This is not a disagreement about the game. It was because he was being very insulting to people who are doing a job that is already high risk enough without them having to deal with social media hate.
Sure, I can see your point there somewhat, and I do agree with it, and also appreciate recontextualizing what the disagreement was there, because I'd forgotten about that. I did know that it existed. I remember it now. God, he was that guy. That's funny.
Yes, that was him.
Yeah, but in any case, I mean, I can sort of see from his perspective in regards to like looking up at the ivory tower and like being like, oh, that's a place I don't have access to, that you might respond to that in an immature way. But I think that him having this opportunity now is an opportunity to see those difficulties that exist. You know, if you have to make content, you have to be involved in the team.
Even if he's successful in this, I don't think it justifies making people's lives harder just because they weren't doing it.
I didn't say that it does. I didn't say it justifies it, but it would allow him to understand why that was maybe wrong. You know, you have to learn from your current experiences and future to, you know, evaluate past experiences.
All right.
I've never brought this up on cast. I never will, and I've praised him for the work that he has done. So
I'm gonna wrap that conversation up there.
No problem.
I think we are getting to the point where we do have to round things out. We're up to about the 2-hour mark, which is the longest episode we've done on Banter with the Boys out of 3 episodes.
You get the 2 biggest fucking yappers in Europe on this.
I've got to be honest. Like, I've had my feet up for the last 2 hours.
By the way.
Yeah, I was only just saying. I don't think I've said anything for the last 20 minutes.
Like, this has been great. And I think we've had some fucking great conversations as well. I've had a fucking great time tonight. Thank you guys for joining us. Just before we go, is there anything you guys have going on right now that you want to shout out, that you want to talk about? Jake, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Veteran, then we'll go to Rob, and then we'll round things out.
Series tomorrow, 5 p.m. NLC, Ruddy. Chance for the good guys to win. Hopefully we do. If we don't, we don't. Working on a few projects in the background now. Trying to work out a way to get a lot of my series with interviews with coaches in a more formatted way. Because talking to coaches is the best thing ever, because I just pretend that they're Jose Mourinho. Also working on a few other things. Probably going to come out with a Patreon soon, so you guys can give me money to do the content that I do. I want to start doing docudramas about players. I've got some interesting stories to tell. Yeah, slow start to the year for me. Been a little bit depressed, but looking to make shit that no one else can.
Hell yeah.
When is this going out on YouTube?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
So given this is going out tomorrow, this will already be announced, but I am currently co-streaming as many ERLs as I can, which right now publicly is Arabian League, Greek League, Hit Point Masters, Ultra Liga. I do NLC too sometimes, but I also do cast NLC. And
just a quick reminder, Veteran, we are actually like still live as well.
I know you're
just
live.
you
You're
want-
live
okay,
with
just
50
in case,
people.
just in case.
And
yeah.
Tomorrow I am going to be co-streaming Prime League for the very first time, which I'm really, really happy
Sick.
to be able to do.
Wow.
They are
Wunderschön.
one of the preeminent leagues right now. I think they have the best early game of all of the leagues, and I think Austrian football is going to be really insane. Tracing, you should absolutely watch, and you can watch him with me. Probably, honestly, a couple of hours before this goes out. But you can watch the rest of his journey probably, unless he just insta lost to Schalke. On Twitch TV/VeteranEU. I'm literally streaming every day. Every day there is something happening in Europe. If you want to see the next MDK, you can see it on my stream 100%.
Hell yeah. Awesome. So definitely, guys, go check these two fine gentlemen out, both massive content creators in the scene, and I respect everything you guys are bringing to the table, because holy fuck, we need good content creators in League of Legends right now. I said it earlier in the podcast, I'll say it again. Rob, anything you want to shout out before we round things out today?
Well, one, I want to watch more Veteran VODs so then I can learn from him because he's a genius. But two, I've also learned over the course of this podcast,
Cheers.
I actually just want to have a patron and subscribe to for DonJake, which is just him discussing his favorite pieces of content and why they're really good, because the way you present that information is actually sick. But the stuff I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do a bit more content. I've been talking to a couple of guys. I'm hoping that'll be up soon. I wanted to do a bit more LPL co-streaming, but I'm not going to lie, my schedule fucking sucks at the moment with NEC, so it's kind of impossible. But yeah, hopefully I can get some more other content out, and then I'll be on LEC as always.
Awesome. Well, that is going to be it from us. Everyone in chat, thank you so much for sticking with us. There have been about 50 of you that have been the fucking ultras the entire time that we've been talking about in the RLs. Thank you so much for sticking with us. This will be out on YouTube. We're doing shorts now on YouTube, on TikTok. We're on about doing it on fucking Instagram.
Yeah,
We're modernizing, guys. We're mobilizing. We're taking over the internet. But
we're
that
trying to
is
pretend
it
we're 10
from
years
us.
younger than we are, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't get this hairline when you're fucking 20 years old.
Well, fucking, I'm 24, mate. You don't want to see what's under
Okay, well, maybe you do. Maybe you do. That is it from us. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, guys. Veteran, Jake, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully, we'll see you in a future episode. And everyone at home, we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Cheers.
Peace.